A scraping sound comes first, stone against stone, rhythmic and deliberate, somewhere in the pre-dawn darkness. Then the smell hits, rotting meat mixed with reptilian musk. The dragons are awake, and they're close. In Liangbua Cave, 37 small bodies huddle together, none taller than your average 10-year-old. But these aren't children, they're fully grown Homo Floresiensis. The real hobbits of Flores Island, and their day is about to begin with a life or death decision that would make Tolkien's fiction look like a casual stroll through the Shire. The matriarch, all of 4 feet tall and maybe 60 pounds soaking wet, peers into the darkness. Her brain is no bigger than a chimpanzee's, but 700,000 years of evolution have packed it with survival software that would shame a Navy SEAL. She doesn't need to see the Komodo dragon to know it's there. The breathing pattern tells her everything. Adult male, about 10 feet long, currently digesting something large, probably won't attack unless provoked. Probably. The morning routine for Homo floresiensis wasn't coffee and email, explains Dr. Thomas Sutiknia, who spent decades excavating their remains. It was a complex threat assessment that started before their eyes even opened. Every dawn was a potential ambush. The dragons have learned the hobbits' patterns over millennia. They know these little humans emerge at first light, heading for water. They know the narrow cave mouth creates a bottleneck. They know patience pays, in protein. So they wait, 300-pound bodies motionless, except for flickering tongues tasting the air, for fear pheromones. Inside, the hobbits face a brutal morning calculus. Stay in the cave, and the standing water from last night's rain grows more contaminated. Dehydration begins its slow kill. But step outside, and you're entering a killing field where predators have had all night to position themselves. The matriarch makes her choice. She clicks her tongue, a sound that wouldn't register as language to our ears, but carries volumes of information to her band. Dragons, left. 2. Water, urgent. Move, right. What happens next is choreography refined over 30,000 generations. The strongest adults form a defensive front, clutching hardened wooden spears. No metal, no fire-hardened points, just sharpened wood and desperate courage. The juveniles cluster in the center, mothers with infants strapped to their backs. The elderly and injured take rear guard, ready to sacrifice themselves if the dragons charge. They move as one organism, 37 hearts beating a terrified rhythm you could dance to. The cave mouth approaches like a portal between worlds. Safe darkness behind, deadly light ahead. The first hobbit steps into dawn, spear raised, and the dragon's head swivels with machine precision. Yellow eyes meet brown across 60 million years of separate evolution. The dragon's brain processes. Small prey, many individuals, defensive formation, energy expenditure versus caloric gain. The hobbit's brain calculates distance to water, dragon digestion state, escape routes, wind direction, time until full daylight. This isn't David and Goliath. This is David and 36 relatives versus Goliath's bigger, hungrier cousin who hasn't read any stories about underdogs winning. The standoff lasts 17 heartbeats. Then the dragon does what dragons do when the math doesn't favor attack. It waits. The massive head settles back onto clawed feet. The immediate threat passes, but every hobbit knows the monster's just penciling them in for lunch. They reach the water source, a limestone pool fed by mountain runoff. But safe is relative when you're 3 feet tall in a world of giants. Giant marabou stalks, 6 feet of feathered death. Watch from the trees. They prefer carrion but aren't above creating some when opportunity knocks. The hobbits drink in shifts, half guarding, half gulping water that might be their last for hours. No cups, no containers, they haven't mastered waterproofing. Just cupped hands and hurried slurps while eyes scan for movement. The matriarch spots it first. Fresh stegodon tracks. The dwarf elephants passed in the night, heading toward the grasslands. Her band needs protein, and a juvenile stegodon could feed them for a week. But the tracks lead directly past where the dragons wait. She weighs options with a brain that shouldn't be capable of such planning, but island evolution has compressed their neurons into hyper-efficient packages. What they lack in volume, they've gained in density. Every sunrise brings decisions that would paralyze modern humans. Every choice carries lethal consequences. The sun breaks the horizon, and somewhere in the forest, a giant rat screams as something catches it. Its sound reminds every hobbit why they survived 700,000 years in this nightmare paradise. Not by being the strongest or the smartest, but by being careful, by being together, by treating every morning like it might be their last. The matriarch clicks. Again. Hunt. Today. Together. The real hobbits of Flores didn't have second breakfast. They were lucky to survive until first breakfast. And their extraordinary journey through each day was about to begin, 3 feet tall in a world built for monsters, armed with nothing but sticks, stones, and the kind of courage that makes fantasy look like documentary. This is their story, and it starts every dawn with dragons. Stand up. Now imagine everything around you suddenly doubles in size. Your kitchen counter hits your chest. Door handles hover at eye level. Every stair becomes a climbing wall. That's daily reality when you're Homo Floresiensis in a world designed for giants. The young male hobbit stares up at the pandanus fruit, hanging 15 feet overhead. For a 6-foot human, it's a simple reach with a stick. For someone 3'6", it might as well be on the moon. But his stomach doesn't care about physics. It just knows those fruits are edible, and everything edible matters when you burn calories like a hummingbird just to stay alive. Their basal metabolic rate was extraordinary. Notes Dr. Debbie Argue from Australian National University. Small bodies lose heat faster, proportionally more than a modern human, but had to gather it with half the reach and a quarter of the carrying capacity. He tries the obvious first. Jumping. His powerful legs, evolved for rough terrain, launch him maybe 2 feet vertical. The fruit sways mockingly 13 feet out of reach. Next, he looks for throwing stones. But pandanus fruits are tough. A rock might knock one down, or just embed itself in the fibrous husk, making it even harder to retrieve. This is the Hobbit paradox. Brilliant enough to solve complex problems, too small to implement easy solutions. But watch what happens next. He doesn't quit, doesn't move to easier prey. Instead, he starts building, not with tools, they haven't invented ladders, with teamwork. He clicks and whistles, calling 2 band members. They understand immediately. This isn't their first vertical challenge. The largest hobbit, all 4'2" of him, braces against the tree. The young male climbs onto his shoulders. Still not enough. A third hobbit, a juvenile weighing maybe 40 pounds, scrambles up both of them like a lemur. The living ladder sways dangerously. One wrong move means broken bones, and broken bones mean death when you can't outrun dragons. The juvenile stretches, fingertips brushing fruit. The 2 below strain under even this minimal weight. Hobbit bones are dense, but small. Their muscles are efficient but limited. They're performing a circus act that modern acrobats would practice with safety nets. They have dirt and hope. Finally, contact. The juvenile doesn't try to pluck the fruit. That would require strength she doesn't have. Instead, she produces a sharp flake from somewhere. Hobbits always carry cutting tools like we carry phones, and saws at the stem. The fruit drops, nearly braining the bottom hobbit. who dodges with reflexes honed by dodging larger things with teeth. Success, 1 fruit, enough calories for maybe 2 hours of survival. Time invested, 30 minutes. Calories burned obtaining it, probably a quarter of its value. This is Hobbit economics, where every meal costs more energy than it should, and the margin for error is written in starvation. But the vertical challenge is everywhere. Cave entrances that humans step into require Hobbit climbing. Stream crossings that barely wet human ankles become swimming challenges for people whose legs are proportionally shorter than their arms. When Stegodon herds pass, leaving their path through the forest, hobbits find chest-high obstacles where elephants saw ankle-high brush. They inhabited a landscape scaled for megafauna, explains Dr. Adam Brum from Griffith University. Every physical feature was oversized. It's like spending your entire life in a world built for NBA players when you're barely tall enough for the kiddie rides. The afternoon hunt illustrates this perfectly. The band has located a young stegodon. Separated from its herd, it's a juvenile, only 400 pounds. To hobbits averaging 55 pounds, it's a walking mountain of meat. But how do you kill something 8 times your weight when your spears are sized for your tiny hands? They can't match its strength, so they use terrain, driving it toward a limestone outcrop where height advantage might matter. But height advantage is relative. The highest hobbit position puts them at the stegodon's shoulder. They're literally trying to kill something by stabbing it in the kneecaps. The physics are brutal. A human throwing a spear generates maybe 150 joules of kinetic energy. A hobbit with shorter arms and less mass manages perhaps 40 joules. They need to be closer, strike more precisely, hit more often. Every kill requires perfection multiplied by persistence. Watch them work. 5 hobbits coordinating like wolves. If wolves were corgi-sized and their prey was a compact car. One distracts, dancing at the edge of trunk swipe range. Others dart in, jabbing at tendons, trying to hamstring what they can't overpower. The stegodon trumpets, a sound that vibrates through hobbit chest cavities like thunder through tissue paper. Then, disaster. The stegodon charges the smallest attacker, and the size difference becomes terrifyingly clear. The hobbit sprints, but those little legs cover half the ground of human strides. The stegodon gains, and everyone watching knows the math. Tiny person plus angry elephant equals tragedy. But hobbits didn't survive 700,000 years by accepting mathematical inevitabilities. The fleeing hobbit suddenly drops, rolling between the stegodon's legs. It's a move impossible for taller humans. We can't fit, but at 3 feet tall, there's just enough clearance. The elephant stumbles, confused. The hobbit emerges behind it, muddy but alive. Their size wasn't just a limitation, Broom reflects. It was also an adaptation. They could hide where we couldn't fit, dodge in ways we couldn't bend, and survive on resources we'd consider inadequate. They were playing a different game with different rules. The stegodon escapes this time, limping but alive. The hobbits regroup, calories burned for nothing, facing the eternal calculation. Energy expenditure versus potential gain. In a world scaled for giants, every action costs more and yields less. Yet they thrived for 750,000 years. Not despite being small, but because they turned smallness into strategy. They were proof that in evolution there's no points for style, only for survival. Even if you have to stand on each other's shoulders just to reach dinner. The raw meat hits her teeth with a sensation modern humans can't imagine. Room temperature, metallic with blood, tough as leather. She tears off a strip of 3-day-old giant rat, jaw muscles working overtime to break down tissue that fire would have softened in minutes. This is breakfast in a world without flames, and it tastes like evolution forgot to install the most basic human technology, the matriarch watches her grandchild struggle with his portion, tiny teeth unable to penetrate the sinew. He's 4 years old, which means he's been chewing raw meat since he was 2. His jaw already shows the pronounced muscle attachments that mark Homo floresiensis skulls, not from genetics alone, but from a lifetime of grinding through uncooked protein. The absence of fire wasn't just inconvenient, emphasizes Dr. Mike Morwood, who discovered the Hobbits. It fundamentally shaped their entire existence. Every meal took longer, provided less nutrition, and exposed them to parasites and pathogens that cooking would have eliminated. She takes the stubborn piece from the child and demonstrates the technique passed down through 30,000 generations. Hold the meat strip in your teeth. Pull with one hand while cutting with a sharp flake held in the other. The slice and pull method that predates cutlery by 700,000 years. Blood runs down her chin. There are no napkins in the Pleistocene. Around the cave, 37 hobbits perform their morning meal ritual. No gathering around a warm hearth sharing stories. No smoke to keep insects away. No light to extend social time into darkness. Just the methodical sound of tearing, cutting, and the occasional crack as someone accesses marrow from yesterday's rat bones. The calcium craving drives them to extremes modern humans would find revolting. A juvenile female gnaws on a week-old stegodon vertebra, her developing body desperate for minerals. She's scraped every accessible surface, but the best marrow hides deep inside bones too thick for hobbit teeth. She finds a fist-sized rock and begins pounding, each strike echoing through the cave. Crack, nothing, crack. A hairline fracture, crack. The bone splits, revealing grey-pink marrow, oxidized by days of exposure. She scoops it with her fingers, savoring the fatty richness. In a world without fire, marrow is butter, ice cream, and steak combined. Dense calories that might mean the difference between surviving the next hunt or becoming too weak to run from dragons. But raw meat is just the beginning of their fireless feast. The gathering party returns with the morning's forage, pandanus fruits, wild tubers, bird eggs stolen from ground nests, and something special, honeycomb raided from a stingless bee colony. The children crowd around as an elder distributes thumbnail-sized portions of the sweet treasure. Without fire, their diet relied heavily on foods that were digestible raw, explains nutritional archaeologist Dr. Amanda Henry. But this severely limited their options. Many tubers that could have provided starch were toxic uncooked. Meat was tougher, less digestible, more dangerous. The eggs present their own challenge. Modern humans might worry about salmonella from raw eggs. Hobbits worried about whether the partially developed chicken side was small enough to swallow whole. Protein is protein when you're burning calories just to maintain body temperature without the external heat source that defined humanity for 400,000 years. A young mother demonstrates plant processing to her daughter. These fern fronds are edible, but only the unfurled tips. Those roots are safe if you scrape off the outer layer. This fruit causes stomach cramps unless it's overripe to the point of fermentation. Each lesson carries lethal importance. Misidentify a plant, and breakfast becomes your last meal. The most precious breakfast item isn't food at all, it's information. An elderly male, perhaps 40 years old, ancient by Hobbit standards, examines fresh scratches on a cave wall. Komodo dragons sharpening claws marking territory. The scratches are higher than last month. Either the dragons are growing or new. Larger individuals have moved in. This intelligence matters more than calories. He shares the information through a complex series of clicks, whistles, and gestures. Not true language as we know it. Their brains likely couldn't support full syntax, but communication sophisticated enough to convey bigger dragons, north wall, recent, dangerous. The band absorbs this breakfast briefing with the same focused attention they gave to their raw rat. They were information omnivores, notes Dr. Dean Falk, who studied their brain structure. Without fire to extend daylight productivity, every dawn meal became a data exchange. Who saw what, where prey moved, which plants fruited, what dangers emerged. Breakfast was their internet. The irony wasn't lost on researchers. Homo erectus mastered fire 1.5 million years ago. Neanderthals had complex hearths 400,000 years ago. Even primitive Homo sapiens carried fire wherever they went. But these island hobbits, despite surviving longer than most human species, never crossed that crucial threshold. Why? Perhaps their island lacked the right materials. Perhaps the cognitive leap required exceeded their compressed brain's capacity. Or perhaps, and this is the haunting possibility, they simply adapted so completely to fireless existence that the need never became desperate enough to drive innovation. A juvenile brings the last breakfast delicacy, beetle larvae pried from rotting wood, fat, white, wiggling packages of pure protein. In a world with fire, these might be roasted crispy. Instead, they're popped like living caviar, providing essential fats that raw, lean meat lacks. The child who earlier struggled with tough rat meat slurps these eagerly. Adaptation in action. As the morning meal ends, the matriarch performs the ritual that replaces what fire-using humans would do with smoke and flame. She takes aromatic leaves, wild basil and citrus, crushing them between her palms and rubbing the oils on her skin, insect repellent Pleistocene style. Others follow suit, understanding that without smoke to keep bugs away, they need every chemical defense available. The cave grows quiet as digestion begins. Raw food takes longer to process, requires more stomach acid, more energy. Many hobbits will feel sluggish for the next hour as their bodies work overtime to extract nutrition from breakfast that fire would have pre-digested. But this is normal. This is life. For 700,000 years, Homo floresiensis proved that fire wasn't mandatory for human survival, just for human dominance. They ate their breakfast cold and raw and difficult, in a cave that smelled of dragon and decay, surrounded by giants that would eat them just as eagerly, and somehow, impossibly, they made it work. No fire, no problem. Just another morning in Hobbit paradise, where breakfast was a full contact sport and cooking was a technology they'd never need. Until the day strangers arrived carrying flames. But that's a story for another meal. The shadow falls across the cave entrance like a curtain made of death. 20 feet of muscle, scale, and evolutionary perfection blocks the morning light. The Komodo dragon doesn't need to hurry. It knows the hobbits are trapped inside, knows there's only one exit, knows patience is just another word for inevitable success. Inside Liengbur Cave, 37 hearts stop beating for one synchronized moment. Then training kicks in. 300,000 years of genetic programming that screams move, hide, defend, survive. But where do you hide from something that can smell fear through solid rock? The pregnant female feels her baby kick, responding to the adrenaline flooding her system. She's 8 months along, moving with the grace of a beached whale. In 2 weeks, she'll deliver a 2-pound infant. Today, she might deliver herself directly into a dragon's stomach. Komodo dragons weren't just predators to Homo floresiensis, whispers Dr. Jatmiko from the Indonesian National Research Center. They were the apex nightmare. Imagine knowing that every single day, something 3 times your height and 10 times your weight was actively hunting you. The dragon's head swivels, tongue flicking in and out, reading the air like a chemical book. Each hobbit has a unique scent signature, the pregnant female rich with hormones, the elder male marked by infection in a shoulder wound, the children sweet with youth. It's a menu written in molecules, and the dragon is deciding which appetizer to order. The matriarch makes the first move, not toward the dragon. That would be suicide by stupidity. Instead, she reaches for the emergency kit they keep near the entrance. River stones worn smooth, each one selected for perfect throwing weight. Her tiny hands can't generate much force, but she doesn't need to hurt the dragon. Just annoy it. The first stone bounces off the dragon's head with a sound like knocking on a door nobody wants opened. The dragon blinks, the most emotion these creatures ever show. The second stone hits its snout. Now it's paying attention. But this is where Hobbit brilliance shines. They're not trying to drive it away. Impossible. They're trying to make it enter the cave, where size becomes liability instead of advantage. The dragon takes the bait. It pushes forward, and suddenly 20 feet of predator tries to navigate a cave entrance designed by geology for things much smaller. Its shoulders scrape limestone. Its tail remains outside. For a creature used to open hunting, the constraint is uncomfortable. Cave architecture was their salvation. Jatmiko explains, Homo floresiensis didn't just live in caves. They chose specific caves with defensive geometries, narrow entrances, multiple chambers, ceiling heights that handicapped larger predators. Inside, the hobbits have scattered to prepared positions. The elderly and pregnant squeeze into crevices too small for anything larger than a child. The warriors, if you can call 3-foot-tall people with wooden sticks warriors, form a spear line in the cave's narrowest choke point. The dragon advances, but physics betrays it. In the open, it can whip its tail for balance, lunge with full body weight, use its size as a weapon. In here, it's like trying to sword fight in a phone booth. Every advantage evolution gave it becomes a limitation architecture imposes. The first Hobbit spear thrust is less attack than experiment, testing reach, gauging reaction speed. The dragon snaps, jaws closing on empty air where the Hobbit was a millisecond ago. These little humans move like mercury when their lives depend on it, which is always. But dragons didn't survive since the Cretaceous by being stupid. This one has a plan too. It begins the technique that makes Komodo dragons nature's perfect killers. Bacterial warfare. It opens its mouth and hisses, spraying saliva in a fine mist. The hobbits recoil, understanding instinctively what science would take millennia to discover. Dragon saliva contains 50 strains of bacteria, 7 highly septic. One bite, even a scratch, and death comes not from trauma, but from blood poisoning days later. The dragon doesn't need to kill them now, it just needs to mark them for future collection. Their saliva was a bioweapon, notes Dr. Brian Fry, venom expert from the University of Queensland. Homo floresiensis had no antibiotics, no fire to sterilize wounds. A dragon bite was a death sentence with a 3-day delay. A young male hobbit mistimes his dodge. Dragon teeth graze his thigh, opening a 6-inch gash. Not deep, not immediately fatal. But everyone knows what it means. He's dead hobbit walking. The dragon knows it too. It actually steps back. Satisfied. Why fight for fresh meat when you can return for aged steaks in 72 hours? But the hobbits aren't done. The matriarch initiates their last resort defense, something dragons hate more than stones or spears. Chaos. Every hobbit begins screaming, throwing things, creating a sensory overload that would make a death metal concert seem peaceful. Rocks, bones, dried feces, anything throwable becomes a projectile. Dragons process information differently than mammals. Their brains, wired for patient stalking, don't handle information overload well. Too many stimuli create a neurological traffic jam. The dragon shakes its head, frustrated, backing toward the entrance. Then comes the Hobbit master stroke. 3 juveniles who'd hidden near the cave mouth dart out just as the dragon retreats. Not attacking, they're running past it into the open. It's a calculated sacrifice play. Dragons, like all predators, are hardwired to chase fleeing prey. The dragon's instincts override its planning. It wheels around, abandoning the cave to pursue the runners. But Hobbit children who've grown up as dragon bait know every tree, every rock, every hiding spot in a quarter-mile radius. They scatter in 3 directions, disappearing into bolt holes too small for anything larger than a house cat. The dragon stands in the clearing, momentarily confused. The cave is behind it, full of hobbits. The forest ahead holds vanished prey. It's the predator's dilemma. Certain meal with effort, or easy meal with uncertainty. They played psychological games with creatures that had been playing them for millions of years. Jatmiko marvels. Homo floresiensis survived by being smarter than things that could physically dominate them. The dragon makes its choice. It settles into ambush position near the cave entrance, close enough to monitor, far enough to allow hobbits to emerge. It'll wait. Dragons are good at waiting, but hobbits are better at patience when patience means survival. Inside, they tend the injured male. Without antibiotics, without fire to cauterize, they do what 700,000 years of evolution taught them. They pack the wound with specific mosses known to slow infection. They'll keep him hydrated, fed, comfortable. But everyone knows the bitter mathematics. In 3 days, he'll either be fever dead or miracle recovered. The odds favor the dragon. As afternoon heat builds, the dragon shifts to shade. It's still there, still waiting, still confident in evolutionary superiority. But the hobbits have a different perspective. Yes, the dragon is bigger, stronger, more deadly. But they're still here after 700,000 years of being hunted by such monsters. Every day was this dance. Jatmiko concludes, dragons hunting hobbits, hobbits outsmarting dragons. Neither species eliminating the other. Perfect predator-prey balance, maintained for millennia. The pregnant female feels her baby kick again and places a tiny hand on her belly. In 2 weeks, she'll deliver a new hobbit into this world of giants and teeth. That child will grow up knowing dragons not as mythical monsters, but as daily reality. Will learn to read their moods, predict their movements, exploit their weaknesses. Will learn that being small in a world of giants isn't a disadvantage if you're smart enough to make the giants play by your rules. The dragon waits. The hobbits wait. Somewhere in the forest, the 3 juveniles wait to return after dark. Everyone waiting for someone else to make the mistake that tips the balance. This is what hobbits did all day. They played 3-dimensional chess with dinosaurs, using caves as castles and courage as currency. And for 700,000 years they won just often enough to keep playing. The sound begins before dawn. A rhythmic tap, tap, crack that echoes through Lianghua Cave like the world's oldest alarm clock. The master toolmaker is already at work, his tiny hands moving with precision that would shame a Swiss watchmaker. Each strike calculated, each fracture predicted, each flake a note in a symphony only he can hear. He's been doing this for 30 years, since his fingers were strong enough to grip stone. His father taught him, as his grandfather taught his father, stretching back through 20,000 generations of hobbits who survived by turning rocks into razors. This morning's project is special, a new cutting tool for the pregnant female who'll need extra sharp implements when her baby arrives. Homo floresiensis toolmaking was paradoxical, explains Dr. Mark Moore from the University of New England. Their tools were simple, what we call Mode 1 technology, But the consistency across 700,000 years suggests mastery rather than limitation. They found what worked and perfected it. The volcanic tuff feels warm in his hands, still holding yesterday's heat. He selected this particular stone from an outcrop 2 valleys away, carrying it back wrapped in leaves to protect the edges. The color tells him it's good stone, gray-green with tiny crystals that catch morning light. The weight says it'll flake predictably. The sound when he taps it promises clean breaks. Around him 3 apprentices watch with the intensity of medical students observing surgery. 2 are his sons, 1 his sister's daughter. Gender doesn't matter in Hobbit tool school. Survival doesn't care about chromosomes. What matters is the angle of strike, the force applied, the ability to see the tool hidden inside the stone. It demonstrates the critical first blow, not straight down, that shatters, not too glancing, that skids, but at precisely 72 degrees, with a hammerstone worn smooth by his grandfather's grandfather. The strike lands, and a flake drops away like a book opening to the right page. The apprentices lean closer, seeing the possibilities revealed in that fresh surface. Their cognitive capacity shouldn't have allowed such planning. Moore continues. But tool-making activates different brain regions than language or abstract thought. They developed a specialized intelligence focused entirely on stone technology. The master works without pause, each strike flowing into the next. He's not thinking in words. Hobbit brains probably couldn't support complex language. He's thinking in shapes, angles, forces. His hands know the stone's grain, like a reader knows letters. The tool emerges from the rock as if it was always there, waiting for someone small enough to care about precision over power. But tool-making isn't solitary art. As the master works, others maintain the cave's tool economy. An elderly female sorts through yesterday's flakes, testing edges with her thumb. Still sharp, back in the pile. Dulled, to the resharpening station, broken, into the children's practice heap. The resharpening station is its own universe of efficiency. A teenage hobbit sits cross-legged, taking dulled tools and giving them new life. The technique is delicate. Too much pressure and you snap the tool. Too little and you polish rather than sharpen. She's working on a scraper that's been resharpened so many times it's half its original size. In a world without metal, you use every molecule of workable stone. They were the ultimate recyclers, notes lithic analyst Dr. Adam Brum. We find tools resharpened down to tiny nubs. Some implements show 20 or 30 separate resharpening episodes. One tool might serve a family for generations. The children's corner reveals tomorrow's toolmakers. A 6-year-old boy, barely 2 feet tall, grips a practice stone between his knees. His strikes are clumsy, his flakes unpredictable. But watch his eyes. He's reading the stone's response, adjusting his angle, learning the conversation between hammer and core. His pile of failures will become experience. His experience will become expertise. The master completes the pregnant female's tool, a blade so sharp it could shave hair if hobbits had any worth shaving, but sharpness is only part of the gift. He's also crafted the handle, wrapping the base in plant fibers for grip, creating a tool that tiny, post-birth hands can control even when slippery with blood and exhaustion. Tool blanks wait in organized rows sorted by size, quality, and purpose. This isn't random rock storage, but a Paleolithic hardware store. Need a scraper for hide preparation. 3rd row, left side. Boring tool for jewelry. Back corner, wrapped in bark. The organization speaks to planning abilities that shouldn't exist in chimp-sized brains. Their spatial intelligence was off the charts, Brum emphasizes. They could visualize tools inside raw stone, plan reduction sequences, and maintain consistent techniques across millennia. It's like finding out goldfish could play chess. The symphony builds as more hobbits join the morning's work. Each has their specialty. The burly male, 4 feet tall, counts as burly here. Focuses on heavy choppers for breaking bones. His strikes ring like bells, all power and purpose. The delicate female beside him crafts microliths, tiny geometric pieces that will become composite tools. Her taps whisper rather than shout. Communication flows without words. A gesture requests a different hammerstone. A click of tongue warns of a bad fracture. Raised eyebrows ask permission to take a partially worked core. They're having complex technical discussions in a language that predates language. The master notices his elder son struggling with a difficult piece. The stone has inclusions, harder spots that deflect strikes unpredictably. In a human society, the teacher might explain the problem verbally. Instead, the master takes the stone, runs his thumb along the surface, letting his son feel the irregularities. Then, he demonstrates working around them, using the flaws as features rather than fighting them. The lesson goes deeper than tool making. In a world where you're 3 feet tall, facing 10-foot dragons, you don't overcome obstacles, you work around them. You don't defeat limitations, you incorporate them. The stone's flaw becomes the tool's strength, just as the Hobbit's size became their survival strategy. A commotion outside interrupts the symphony. The morning hunting party has returned with a giant rat. Immediately, the toolmakers shift from creation to application. Fresh flakes are selected for butchering. The master himself chooses a piece he made yesterday. You don't use practice pieces on real food. The butchering becomes its own performance. Each cut planned to waste nothing. The hide removed in sections that will become carrying bags. Sinew extracted intact for binding. Bones separated at joints for marrow extraction later. The tools sing through flesh with efficiency, born from repetition beyond counting. Watching traditional cultures butcher with stone tools is humbling. More reflects. It's faster and cleaner than most people with steel knives. Homo floresiensis had 700,000 years to perfect these techniques. They were artists working in meat and stone. Blood on stone creates its own problems. Wet tools slip, endangering fingers that can't afford injury. The hobbits solve this with powdered ash from old fires. They can't make fire, but they save its remnants. Rubbed on bloody hands, it provides grip. Rubbed on tools, it shows use patterns that guide resharpening. As the butchering ends, the master returns to his symphony. The pregnant female's tool is complete, but the day's work has just begun. Apprentices need teaching, tools need maintaining, new stones need testing. In a world without metal, stone tools aren't just implements, they're the thin edge between survival and extinction. He strikes the stone again, the sound ringing through the cave like a bell. Tap, tap, crack. The rhythm of survival. The beat of hobbit hearts for 700,000 years. Later, archaeologists would puzzle over the simplicity of their tools. Why didn't they advance? Why didn't they innovate? They missed the obvious answer. When you've perfected a symphony, why write new music? The stone symphony plays on, each strike a note in humanity's longest song. 3 feet tall, but giants in persistence, the hobbits made music from rocks and survived longer than any human species before or since, all without ever needing a crescendo. The limestone pool glimmers like a trap made of liquid crystal. Every creature on Flores needs water, and they all know where to find it, which makes the spring at the base of the cliff less watering hole and more gladiatorial arena where the price of admission is your life. The scouting party, 2 adult hobbits weighing less together than a modern 10-year-old, creep through elephant grass that towers over their heads. Every step calculated. to avoid the dry stems that would announce their presence like trumpets. They're not the only ones thinking about morning hydration. Fresh tracks in the mud tell today's story. Stegodon prints, deep and round as dinner plates. Komodo dragon tail drags crossing them at angles. And there, the sight that makes both scouts freeze, giant marabou stalk tracks circling the pool's edge. The 6-foot birds are here, and they're hungry. Water sources were conflict zones, explains Dr. Hanneke Meyer, who studies extinct island fauna. Every species needed water daily. For 3-foot-tall hominins, approaching these areas was like entering a war zone where you're the smallest combatant. The lead scout, a female with scars telling stories of previous water runs, hand signals to her partner. Stalks, 3, north side, waiting. The giant birds have positioned themselves perfectly, pretending to sleep while watching the approach trails. 1 hobbit might slip past, 2 definitely won't. But hobbits didn't survive 700,000 years by accepting defeat. They've turned disadvantage into strategy before. Time to do it again. The male scout begins gathering small stones, not for throwing, but for noise. The female starts stripping leaves from a particular plant. Wild ginger that stalks hate. Their plan is simple. Chaos and chemistry make the stalks uncomfortable enough to relocate, even temporarily. The first stone lands in the pool with a splash that sends ripples across the surface. The stalks' heads swivel with machine precision, but they don't move. These birds have been ambush predators for millions of years. They know patience. Second stone. Third, the female begins her approach, not directly but circling wide, crushing ginger leaves between her palms. The scent carries downwind toward the stalks. 1 shifts position, uncomfortable but not convinced. Then the male makes his move. He doesn't run at the water. Suicide. Instead, he climbs. Hobbits might be small, but their arm-to-leg ratio gives them climbing advantages. He scales a dead tree overhanging the pool, positioning himself above the danger zone. Their proportions were perfect for arboreality, notes primatologist Dr. Susan Larson. Long arms, curved fingers, low center of gravity. They could access water from angles other species couldn't consider. From his perch, he can see what ground-level scouts missed. A Komodo dragon, perfectly camouflaged, waiting in the reeds just beyond the stalks. The birds are bait. The dragon is the trap. And any hobbit walking to water would pass directly between them. It clicks a warning, sharp, carrying, unmistakable. His partner freezes mid-step. The stalk's heads snap toward the sound. The dragon, realizing its ambush is blown, rises from the reeds like a prehistoric nightmare resuming its role. What happens next is pure hobbit genius. The male drops the rest of his stones not at the pool but behind the dragon. The splashes sound like something large approaching. The dragon, programmed to avoid confrontation with equals, turns to assess this new threat. The stalks, seeing the dragon distracted, decide the hunting has gotten too complicated. They lift off with wings that blot out sections of sky, heading for easier killing grounds. The dragon, finding no threat behind it, swivels back to find the pool abandoned. In the confusion, the female hobbit has bellied down to the water's edge, filling a carrier made from dried gourd. Not optimal, they can only carry what their small hands can hold. But some water beats no water when dehydration stalks you as surely as any predator. The male descends quickly, knowing the dragon's confusion won't last. They need to go, now, but as they retreat, they see why the dragon was so patient. A dead giant rat floats near the pool's far edge, bloated with decomposition. Poisoned water. The dragon wasn't hunting. It was waiting for whatever drank to weaken. They had to be chemists, biologists, and tacticians just to get a drink. Maya emphasizes, every water source required different strategies. Some had parasites, others had territorial predators. A few were safe, but required dangerous journeys. The scouts make it back to the main group with their precious cargo and crucial intelligence. Water is tainted today. They'll need to try the Highland stream. Farther, more exposed, but less likely to be poisoned. The eternal calculation, risk versus reward, measured in mouthfuls. An elder examines the water they did retrieve, sniffing carefully. His grandfather taught him to detect contamination by smell, as his grandfather's grandfather taught him. The knowledge chain stretches back through deep time, each generation adding observations, refining, understanding. He judges it safe for external use only. The pregnant female needs it most. Keeping wounds clean without fire requires constant vigilance. Every drop is rationed with mathematical precision. A palm full for drinking, a splash for wound cleaning. Nothing wasted. The children watch and learn. Water isn't just liquid. It's strategic resource requiring planning, courage, and sometimes sacrifice. They see the scars on the scouts, understand that previous water runs didn't all end successfully. Some hobbits went to drink and never returned. Modern humans turn a handle for water, nature reflects. Homo Floresiensis engaged in military operations for every sip. It shaped their entire society. Water runs were communal efforts with designated roles: scouts, defenders, carriers, lookouts. As the sun climbs higher, the hobbits know other predators are claiming the good water sources. By afternoon, only the most dangerous spots remain, the ones where dragons congregate, where storks hunt in groups, where the water itself might kill you as surely as any predator. But they'll go again tomorrow, and the next day, and every day for 700,000 years, because the alternative to facing dragons for water is dying of thirst. In the arithmetic of survival, bad odds beat no odds. The water wars continue, fought one careful sip at a time by warriors 3 feet tall, with courage measured in oceans. The giant rat weighs 40 pounds and has teeth like chisels. It moves through the underbrush with the confidence of a creature that knows it's too big for most predators to bother with and too fast for the rest. It hasn't counted on Mira. She's 16 years old, 3'5", and the best rat catcher her band has seen in generations. Where others see a dangerous rodent, she sees walking calories that could feed her family for 3 days. Where others hear rustling chaos, she hears patterns that tell her exactly where the rat will emerge. Papa Gomis, Armonville, wasn't your garden variety rodent, explains paleontologist Dr. Kenneth Aplin. These were rats the size of small dogs, with powerful jaws and aggressive temperaments. Hunting them required extraordinary skill. Mira learned from her mother, who learned from her mother, stretching back through centuries of women who specialized in this crucial protein source, while the men obsessed over stegodon. Rare, dangerous, often unsuccessful, the women quietly perfected rat catching into an art form that actually fed the band. She's identified this particular rat's warren, a complex of tunnels beneath the roots of a massive fig tree. The entrances are mapped in her mind like subway stations. She knows which leads to the nest, which are escape routes, which are decoys. This knowledge cost her 2 scars and countless failed hunts. Her tools are deceptively simple. A specialized spear, shorter than those used for large game, with a barbed point designed to hold thrashing prey. A net woven from plant fibers, each knot tied to specific tensions. Stone flakes sharp enough to process meat, but small enough for her child-sized hands to control. And patience, the kind of patience that comes from knowing hunger intimately. The morning setup takes an hour. She blocks secondary exits with stones and packed earth, leaving only 2 routes open, One leads to her net, the other to her apprentice, her 12-year-old brother, who's still learning to read rat behavior. He's nervous, fidgeting with his spear. She clicks her tongue softly, reminding him that rats sense fear through vibrations. The hunting strategy was pure genius, Applin notes. They turned the rats' own tunnel systems against them. It's like they were playing three-dimensional chess with rodents who didn't know they were in a game. She begins the drive, not by going after the rat directly. That would be like trying to catch lightning. Instead, she uses smoke. Not fire smoke. Hobbits can't make fire. But smoke from crushed leaves that smolder rather than burn. The acrid smell drifts into the warren, carefully directed by palm frond fans. Deep underground, the rat's world fills with irritating fumes. Its eyes water, its sensitive nose burns. The tunnels that were sanctuary become gas chambers. It needs air, fresh air, and Mira knows exactly where it will seek relief. The rat explodes from the earth like a furry geyser, exactly where she predicted. Her brother, startled despite expecting it, thrusts his spear a fraction late. The rat twists midair. These creatures are gymnasts as well as giants. The spear grazes fur but doesn't penetrate. But Mira planned for her brother's inexperience. The rat lands directly in her net zone, its momentum carrying it into the fiber web. For a moment that lasts forever, 40 pounds of muscle and fury thrash against her trap. The net holds. Barely. Fibers strain but don't snap. She moves with practiced efficiency, no dramatic killing blow that wastes energy and risks injury. Instead, she pins the rat with her body weight, all 50 pounds of it, while sliding her smallest blade between vertebrae. Quick, clean. The thrashing stops. Each kill required encyclopedic knowledge, emphasizes Dr. Jatmako. Anatomy, behavior, seasonal patterns, individual quirks. These weren't random hunts, but carefully orchestrated harvests. Her brother watches her process the carcass, learning by observation. First, check for parasites. Giant rats carry giant problems. Then the initial cuts, opening the belly carefully to avoid puncturing organs that would taint the meat. The liver goes to the pregnant female, iron for the growing baby. The heart to the elder with breathing problems. Tradition says it helps, and tradition keeps hobbits alive. But rats aren't just meat. The fur, properly cleaned, makes excellent bedding for infants. The bones, especially leg bones, become tools. The sinew provides binding material, stronger than any plant fiber. Even the teeth find purpose. Drill bits for creating holes in softer materials. The best part? Rats breed like, well, rats. Kill one today, another moves into the territory within weeks. It's sustainable protein in a way Stegodon could never be. One pregnant rat can produce 60 offspring per year. The math of survival favors those who think small. Modern humans chase big game for glory, Applin observes. Homo floresiensis chased rats for reliability. Guess who survived longer? Back at the cave, Mira's success draws a crowd. Children watch her demonstrate butchering techniques scaled for tiny hands. Elders nod approval at her clean kill. No wasted meat, no damaged fur. The pregnant female tears up when handed the liver, understanding the gift's significance. Her brother glows with pride despite missing his thrust. He helped. He learned. Next time he might make the kill. The apprenticeship continues, knowledge flowing like water from generation to generation. But Mira's already thinking ahead. She's noticed rat behavior changing. They're denning deeper, emerging later, becoming warier. Evolution in real time as rats adapt to hobbit predation. She'll need new strategies, new techniques. The arms race between predator and prey never ends. As night falls, the band feasts on rat meat, not glamorous, not the stuff of cave paintings, but reliable, renewable, and perfectly sized for people who stood hip-high to modern humans. They survived not by conquering giants, but by mastering the middle ground. Every successful rat hunt bought them days of survival. Jatmiko concludes, multiply that by 700,000 years, and you understand how they outlasted species that seemed stronger. Mira cleans her tools, already planning tomorrow's hunt. There's another warren 2 valleys over, inhabited by a particularly large male. The challenge excites her. In a world where you're 3 feet tall, you take your victories where you find them, even if victory squeaks and has whiskers. The plan is insane. 5 hobbits, combined weight maybe 300 pounds, intend to kill a juvenile stegodon that weighs 800 pounds. It's like a kindergarten class deciding to take down a bulldozer using nothing but pointed sticks and optimism. But they've done it before, and hunger makes even insane plans seem reasonable. The matriarch draws in the dirt with a stick, marking positions. Each hobbit memorized this choreography years ago, but she reviews anyway. Lives depend on everyone knowing exactly where to be when half a ton of terrified elephant charges through their killing ground. Stegodon hunting required mathematical precision, explains archaeologist Dr. Mike Morwood. 1 hobbit out of position meant failure. 2 out of position meant casualties. They had 0 margin for error. The target grazes alone, separated from the herd by 100 yards. Close enough to call for help. Far enough that help won't arrive in time. It's a 2-year-old, still nursing but beginning to browse. Perfect size. Small enough to kill, large enough to feed everyone for a week. The approach takes 3 hours, not because hobbits move slowly, they can sprint when needed, but because stegodon have trunks, and trunks are sense organs that make bloodhounds jealous. 1 whiff of hobbit scent, and the hunt ends before it begins. So they circle downwind, moving like ghosts through grass that reaches their shoulders. Each hunter carries specialized equipment, not the long spears of human elephant hunters. Those require reach hobbits don't have. Instead, short thrusting spears with hafted microblades creating serrated edges. 1 hunter carries the special tool, a hamstringing blade designed for exactly 1 purpose. Cut the Achilles tendon, and even elephants can't run. The tools tell the story, Morwood notes. These weren't general-purpose weapons, but specialized instruments for a specific task, like surgical tools designed for 1 operation. They reach position. The matriarch signals. The youngest hunter, 16, fastest runner, expendable if things go wrong, begins the drive. He doesn't charge the stegodon. That would be suicide by stupidity. Instead, he appears at its peripheral vision, moving steadily, being obvious, being bait. The stegodon startles, trumpets a call its mother will hear but not understand. It begins moving away from the threat, directly toward where 4 hobbits wait in ambush. The driver maintains perfect distance, close enough to keep it moving, far enough to avoid those swinging tusks. The elephant enters the kill zone between 2 limestone outcrops. The hobbit with the hamstringing blade lies flat, invisible in grass, until the massive foot passes inches from his face. Then he rolls, slashing at the tendon with a motion practiced on dead carcasses 1,000 times. The blade bites deep, but not deep enough. The stegodon screams, stumbles, but keeps moving. This is the critical moment. Failed hamstringing means the elephant escapes, or worse, turns on its attackers. But hobbits plan for failure. The 2 flanking hunters dart in, thrusting at the wounded leg, not to kill, to worsen the damage. The combined trauma finally severs enough tissue. The stegodon crashes to its front knees. What happens next would disturb modern viewers. Morwood warns, Stone Age hunting wasn't clean or quick. It was brutal efficiency with stone tools. The matriarch moves in for the killing thrust. Even kneeling, the stegodon's head towers above her. She needs to reach the throat, where major arteries run close to surface. But the trunk, 60,000 muscles of prehensile defense, swings like a club. One hit would shatter hobbit bones like twigs. The youngest hunter, still playing bait, shouts and waves from the stegodon's blind spot. The trunk swivels toward this new threat. The matriarch has maybe 3 seconds. She doesn't waste them. The spear goes in just behind the jaw, angling up. Blood fountains with arterial pressure. The elephant's eyes show confusion, then understanding, then nothing. 5 hobbits, each small enough to ride a modern pony, have just killed an elephant using coordination, courage, and Stone Age technology. But the work's just beginning. 800 pounds of meat will spoil quickly in tropical heat. They need to process it fast and transport it faster. The logistics was staggering, emphasizes Dr. Susan Anton. How do you move 800 pounds when your entire hunting party can barely carry 100? They had to transform elephants into portable packets. They work with industrial efficiency. Hide comes off in sections, future clothing, containers, shelter material. Meat gets cut into strips for easier transport. Organs are wrapped in leaves. The liver alone weighs more than a hobbit child. Nothing wastes. Everything has purpose. But time is enemy now. The dead elephant's family heard its distress calls. They're coming, slowly, investigating, but definitely coming. And while hobbits might ambush a juvenile, they can't fight adult stegodon. Those are moving mountains with maternal rage. The youngest hunter, posted as lookout, whistles sharp warning. Dust cloud from the herd may be 10 minutes away. The butchering accelerates from careful to desperate. They'll have to leave meat. Criminal waste in a world where calories mean survival. But leaving beats dying. Each hobbit loads what they can carry, maybe 30 pounds, more than half their body weight. The matriarch takes the tusks, not for glory, but for tools. Ivory stays workable longer than stone, and this elephant's death will provide implements for years. They move out just as adult stegodon arrive. The giants investigate their fallen juvenile, trunks exploring the carcass with something approaching grief. One matriarch, massive, scarred, probably the dead elephant's mother, turns toward the fleeing hobbits. She knows what happened, knows who's responsible. Elephants remember. Anton states simply, the hobbit band would have to avoid this area for months, maybe years. Elephant justice is patient but inevitable. The hobbits make it back to camp, exhausted but triumphant. 800 pounds of elephant minus what they abandoned will feed 37 people for days. Children who are getting thin will fatten. Pregnant females will have protein for growing babies. Elders will gnaw marrow for strength. But the matriarch's already planning ahead. That elephant family will remember them. The area's burned for hunting. They'll need new territories, new strategies. The arms race between 3-foot hunters and 8-foot prey continues. They hunted elephants for 700,000 years, Morwood marvels. David beat Goliath not once, but thousands of times, with stone spears and Stone Age courage. As night falls, the band feasts on elephant meat. Tomorrow they'll process hide, cure strips, crack bones for marrow. Every calorie extracted, every nutrient absorbed. 5 tiny humans killed a giant and lived to tell the tale. Not bad for creatures that could walk under a modern kitchen table without ducking. Liangbua Cave has moods. Today, it's angry. Water seeps through limestone pores like the earth is sweating, dripping from stalactites in rhythms that sound like counting. The hobbits know what this means. The cave that sheltered them for generations is about to become a death trap. The eldest male, 42 years old and ancient by hobbit standards, runs his palm along the cave wall. The stone feels different during monsoon season. Wetter, yes, but also warmer, as if the mountain's fever is breaking. He's lived through 38 floods. His arthritis is better than any barometer at predicting when home becomes hazard. Liang Bua wasn't just shelter, explains geologist Dr. Paul Goldberg. It was a living system. Water carved it, seasonally flooded it, occasionally tried to reclaim it. The hobbits were essentially living inside a geological mood swing. The preparation begins with evacuation priorities. Tools go first. A band can survive losing members, but not the means to make new implements. Generations of stone technology get wrapped in leaves and secured in the highest crevices. Some tools haven't been touched in years, but they're ancestral inheritance. You don't abandon your great-grandmother's favorite scraper to a flood. Children gather the irreplaceable, carved ivory ornaments, special stones collected for their colors, the tiny Venus figurines someone's ancestor made from river clay. These aren't survival items, but soul items. The things that make 37 people a culture, instead of just a breeding population. The pregnant female poses a special problem. She's due any day, can barely waddle, and climbing to flood-safe zones might trigger labor. But staying means drowning when the cave's lower chambers fill. The matriarch assigns 2 strong females as her escorts. They'll carry her if needed. No hobbit left behind, even if it means especially difficult math. Their social bonds were extraordinary, notes anthropologist Dr. Kira Westerway. In crises, they revealed decision-making that prioritized community over individual survival. Very different from survival of the fittest stereotypes. Outside, the sky has turned the color of old bone. Pressure drops so fast, their ears pop. Even the Komodo dragons have disappeared, finding whatever shelter 300-pound lizards use when nature goes insane. The birds are gone too, except for one giant marabou stork that seems to be waiting for casualties. The first fat raindrops hit, like warnings. Then the sky opens. This isn't rain, it's vertical river. Visibility drops to 0. The temperature crashes 10 degrees in minutes. Every hobbit's primitive clothing becomes sodden weight, and this is just the prelude. The elder male shouts over the roar. Not words, their simple language can't compete with this volume, but gestures everyone understands. Move. Now. Up. The band begins climbing to the cave's upper galleries, spaces they normally avoid because dragons like heights too, but dragons are lesser evil today. Water enters Liangbua not like a stream, but like a beast. It doesn't flow, it charges, carrying everything movable. The fire pit where they've cooked for generations disappears under brown fury. Sleeping areas vanish. The communal space where they napped stones becomes a whirlpool. A child screams. She slipped on wet limestone, sliding toward the water. Her mother dives, all 45 pounds of her, catching her daughter's wrist as small fingers scrabble on smooth stone. For a moment that lasts forever, both might go under. Then other hands reach out. A chain of hobbits, anchored by the strongest, pulls both to safety. The physics were terrifying, Goldberg explains. Water weighs 8 pounds per gallon. A modest flood carries tons of force. For someone hobbit-sized, it's like being hit by a liquid freight train. They climb higher. The upper galleries are cramped, designed by geology for things that crawl, not walk. 37 hobbits compress into spaces meant for maybe 20. The pregnant female gasps, not labor, just panic. The walls feel like they're closing in because, effectively, they are. But these galleries hold secrets. Previous floods left their marks. Water lines showing maximum heights. The elders read these like safety instructions. This chamber flooded 20 years ago. That one stayed dry for grandfather's grandfather. They choose based on ancestral wisdom written in calcium deposits. The flood peaks. Water rises to within inches of their refuge. One enterprising wave sends spray into their huddle. Children whimper. Adults calculate whether they need to climb even higher. The cave that protected them for centuries is showing its other face, the one that swallows, drowns, erases. Then comes the worst part, waiting. They can't leave until water recedes. Can't hunt, gather, or even move much. 37 people in a space designed for half that number. No fire to dry clothes or warm bodies. No stored food. It's all underwater or washed away. Just wet, scared hobbits pretending to be brave for the children. These floods lasted days. Westaway notes. Imagine your entire family locked in a closet for 72 hours. No food, no heat, no bathrooms. Now add the constant fear that water might rise another foot. The elder male tells stories to pass time. Not in words, their language isn't complex enough for narrative, but in gestures, sounds, expressions. He acts out great floods of the past, times when hobbits survived worse. His grandfather's courage during the flood that killed half the band. His grandmother's cleverness in predicting floods by watching ant behavior. Stories become teaching. The children learn to read the cave's moods. That discoloration means periodic flooding. Those scratches show previous high water marks. This chamber floods, that one doesn't, and knowing the difference saves lives. Education disguised as entertainment, keeping young minds off empty bellies. On day 3, the water finally recedes. The band descends to devastation. Their home has been rearranged by hydraulic forces. Tools scattered or buried. The latrine area they carefully maintained is mixed with everything else. Mud coats every surface. The cave smells like geology's armpit, but they're alive. All 37, including the pregnant female who manages not to deliver during crisis. They begin the heartbreaking work of reclamation, digging out tools, scraping mud, re-establishing the organizational system that makes cave life bearable. Some things are gone forever. The children's practice stones swept away. A grinding stone used for generations, too heavy to evacuate, now buried under tons of sediment. They'll make new ones, but the ancestral connections are severed. Each flood erases a little history. They accepted this as normal. Goldberg emphasizes, not disasters, but seasonal events. Like we accept winter, they accepted that their home tried to kill them annually. By nightfall, they've reclaimed enough space to sleep. Not comfortably, everything's damp and muddy, but safely. The cave that tried to drown them is shelter again. The relationship continues. Wary partners in survival. The elder male makes one last check before sleeping, running his hand along the wall, feeling for tomorrow's mood. The stone feels cooler, drier. The cave is settling. Until next season, when the dance begins again. Living inside the earth means accepting the earth's temperament. For 700,000 years, hobbits did exactly that. They breathed with the cave, fled when it exhaled floods, returned when it inhaled peace. Not conquered, not defeated, just resilient enough to survive a home that loved them to death. Little Kira can't sleep. She's 4 years old, weighs 18 pounds, and every shadow might have teeth. Without fire, the cave at night is darker than modern humans can imagine. Not dim, not gloomy, absolute black that presses against eyeballs like physical weight. Her mother feels the trembling and pulls her closer. At 3'4", Mother isn't much bigger than a modern child herself. But to Kira, she's the wall between safety and the things that hunt in darkness. Together they lie on beds of dried grass, listening to the night symphony of 37 people trying not to think about what might be watching. Raising children without fire was perhaps their greatest challenge, reflects Dr. April Nowell, who studies prehistoric childhood. Every parent's nightmare, literal monsters in the dark, was their nightly reality. The sounds are worst. Komodo dragons are silent hunters until they're not. That scraping might be claws on limestone or just wind through stalactites. The breathing could be a sleeping uncle or something much larger, waiting for someone small to wander from the group. Without fire to create a barrier of light, every sound requires analysis. Kira needs to urinate, but that means moving to the designated area near the cave mouth. 20 feet, that might as well be 20 miles when you can't see your own feet. She whimpers, the universal child signal for, I need help, but don't want to need help. Her mother understands. Together, they navigate by touch and memory. Mother's hand finds the guide rope, plant fiber stretched between sleeping area and latrine. Previous generations installed this after losing too many children to darkness. It's not much, but it's the difference between finding the right spot and stumbling into something hungry. Their spatial memory was extraordinary. Noel explains. Children learn to navigate in total darkness using mental maps. Every rock, every slope, every turn memorized through repetition and necessity. They reach the latrine area. Mother stands guard while Kira relieves herself. This is when they're most vulnerable, separated from the group, distracted, scent marking their location. Mother's head swivels uselessly in the dark, but her ears work overtime. That drip is just water. That rustle is just wind. Probably. Back at the sleeping area, Kira can't resettle. She's entered that spiral where fear feeds on itself. Without fire's comfort, without light to banish shadows. Her imagination populates the darkness with every predator she's ever glimpsed. Dragons with yellow eyes, storks that snatch children, the giant rats that sometimes bite sleeping hobbits. Her older brother, 6 and worldly, whispers stories to calm her, not words. Their proto-language isn't sophisticated enough for true narrative, but sounds and gestures that paint pictures in the dark. He tells of the clever hobbit who outsmarted a dragon by being too small to see, the brave child who found water when adults couldn't, heroes Kira's size doing impossible things. Storytelling without firelight required different techniques, notes Dr. Dean Folk. They used touch, sound effects, probably even smells to create narrative. It was multi-sensory entertainment born from necessity. The night stretches endlessly. Modern humans with our circadian rhythms disrupted by artificial light sleep poorly. But hobbits, synchronized to natural darkness, should sleep well, except for the constant vigilance required. They doze in shifts, always someone awake, always someone listening. Parents sleep lighter than their children, ready to react to any change in breathing patterns that might signal danger. A commotion erupts near the cave entrance. Something has entered. The sounds of scuffling, a sharp cry, quickly muffled. The adults react with practiced efficiency. Those with children pull them close. The strongest males move toward the disturbance, spears ready, not charging. That's how you die in darkness, but creating a barrier between threat and young. It's just a monitor lizard, smaller cousin to the dragons. Still dangerous, 6 feet of muscle and bacteria-laden bite, but manageable. It probably smelled the latrine area, investigating whether anything edible left traces. The hobbit it surprised has a gashed arm but will survive. The lizard won't. Fresh meat for tomorrow, delivered by darkness. Every night brought these micro-dramas, Falk explains. Not always life-threatening, but constant stress. Raising children in this environment required extraordinary vigilance and community support. As dawn finally grays the sky, Kira has survived another night. She doesn't know that her chances of reaching adulthood are maybe 50%, that half her playmates won't see puberty, That darkness takes as many children as disease or predation. She just knows mother kept her safe again. The morning routine begins, checking all children are accounted for. One boy has a fever, possibly from parasites. A girl shows infected scratches from yesterday's thorn encounter. Without fire to sterilize wounds or boil medicinal teas, every injury threatens to become fatal. Parents apply what remedies they know, crushed leaves with antimicrobial properties, mosses that slow infection. Sometimes it works, but childhood isn't all terror. As full light arrives, the children explode into activity. They've survived another night and celebration is play. Boys practice spear thrusts with sticks. Girls weave grass into proto-baskets. Everyone participates in the endless game of dragon and Hobbit, where quick feet matter more than size. Their play was deadly serious training, Noel observes. Every game taught survival skills. Tag developed evasion techniques. Hide and seek could save your life. They played their way to competence. Kira joins a group building stone towers, not just stacking but learning balance, weight distribution, engineering principles they'll need for toolmaking. Her small fingers are clumsy but improving. By age 6, she'll be napping basic flakes. By 8, contributing to the band's survival, if darkness doesn't claim her first. The darkness always returns, every 12 hours, regular as heartbeat. And every sunset, parents face the same challenge, keeping children alive through another night, without humanity's most basic protection. No fire to warm them, no light to comfort them, just darkness pressing in, and the hope that tomorrow's dawn finds everyone still breathing. They raised generations in conditions we'd consider abuse. Falk concludes, yet they produced children capable of surviving and thriving. The human capacity for adaptation starts in childhood, and Hobbit children prove that every night. Kira naps in the afternoon sun, exhausted from her sleepless night. Her mother watches, knowing tonight will bring the same fears, the same dangers, the same desperate navigation through darkness, but also the same love, protection, and community that has kept Hobbit children alive for 700,000 years. Growing up without fire means growing up fast, but it also means growing up together, bound by shared darkness into families tighter than modern humans can imagine. Every dawn is a victory, every child who reaches adulthood, a miracle born from courage measured in nighttime survived. The darkness shapes them, but doesn't break them, because Hobbit children have something more powerful than fire. Parents who refuse to let the dark win. The bamboo shoots are ready. Mila knows this like she knows her children's faces, by subtle signs invisible to casual observers. The color has shifted from bright green to dusty jade. The sheaths show hairline cracks. Most importantly, the moon is in the right phase. Her grandmother taught her that bamboo harvested under the wrong moon turns bitter. She leads today's gathering party. 4 women, 2 adolescent boys, and her own daughter, just old enough at 7 to carry her own collection basket. They move through the forest like they own it, because in every way that matters, they do. This is their supermarket, their pharmacy, their hardware store. They just have to know where everything is shelved. Hobbit women were the unsung heroes of survival, states ethnobotanist Dr. Anna Revedin. While men hunted dramatic protein, women quietly provided 70% of calories through gathering. Without them, the species would have starved. Mela stops at an innocuous tree. To untrained eyes, it's just another forest giant. But she sees the subtle scratches on bark, her marks from last season, showing where the best vines grow. She boosts her daughter up. When you're 3'6", even children need lifting to reach the tender shoots that will become tonight's vegetable course. The girl pulls too hard, showering both with debris. Mila doesn't scold. Every mistake is a lesson, and harsh words might make her daughter fear trying. Instead, She demonstrates the twist and pull technique that separates vine from tree without damaging either. Sustainability isn't a modern concept. It's survival when you'll need the same resources next year. They work systematically. Each gatherer has specialties based on knowledge and body type. Tira, young and flexible, climbs for fruits. Old Suki, whose arthritis makes climbing impossible, focuses on ground-level mushrooms and tubers. The boys dig for roots, their stronger arms useful for breaking hard-packed earth. Everyone contributes, according to ability. The efficiency was remarkable, Reverden notes. Modern foragers might recognize 200 plant species. Homo Floresiensis women likely knew twice that. Every plant's seasonal availability, preparation methods, medicinal properties. They were walking botanical encyclopedias. A rustle in the canopy signals opportunity. Birds fleeing usually means fruit is ripe enough to attract attention. Mila follows the commotion to a fig tree, its branches heavy with purple globes. But there's a problem. Fresh Komodo dragon scratches on the trunk. Something large climbed here recently, and dragons do climb when motivated by food or prey. She weighs risk versus reward. The figs are perfect, each one a packet of sugar and calories. But is harvest worth potentially meeting a dragon in a tree where neither can escape easily? She makes the calculation all gatherers make daily. How hungry is the band versus how dangerous is the food? The boys volunteer to climb. Young male bravado is universal across species and time. But Mila overrules. She's lighter, faster, and most importantly, experienced in reading dragon sign. The scratches are days old, the scent faded. The dragon has moved on. Probably. Every gathering decision involved complex risk assessment, explains Dr. Shara Bailey. Calories gained versus energy expended versus danger encountered. They were doing cost-benefit analysis without spreadsheets. She climbs carefully, testing each branch. At Hobbit weight, she can access outer limbs that would snap under human adults. It's one advantage of being small. You can harvest where others can't reach. She fills her basket, dropping fruits to waiting hands below. The dragon never appears. This time, ground level brings different treasures. Suki has found a mushroom patch, but she's examining them with life or death intensity. These look like the safe variety, but several toxic species are nearly identical. She breaks one open, sniffs carefully, touches a tiny piece to her lip. The tingle tells her what she needs. Edible, but only after processing. Raw, they'd cause vomiting. The processing knowledge is crucial. These mushrooms need soaking in stream water, then drying, then grinding into powder that can be added to other foods. It's a 3-day process for one meal's flavoring, but flavor matters when your diet is limited. Taste is the difference between eating to survive and wanting to survive. They were chemists without laboratories, Bailey emphasizes, understanding that certain toxins were water-soluble, others heat-labile, some neutralized by acids. This knowledge accumulated over millennia of trial and potentially fatal error. Mila's daughter makes her first independent find, a cluster of bird eggs in a ground nest. Her excitement is infectious, but Mila faces a teaching moment. Take all the eggs and no birds next season. Take half, and protein continues indefinitely. The child doesn't understand future consequences. Her brain can't process abstractions yet, but she understands mother's tone. 3 eggs taken, 3 left. The lesson is planted, if not yet grown. The gathering continues through morning into afternoon. Bamboo shoots, figs, mushrooms, eggs, several tuber varieties, medicinal leaves for the elder with breathing problems, and something special, wild ginger root, not for eating, but for medicine. Grated and applied to wounds, it fights infection in a world without antibiotics. But the forest offers one final test. The boys ranging ahead freeze and signal danger. Fresh stegodon tracks cross their path, heading toward the water source. The herd is moving through their gathering grounds. Do they continue and risk encountering elephants, or return with incomplete harvest? These decisions shaped society, Reverden states. Too conservative, and you starve slowly. Too bold, and you die quickly. The gatherers who survived found the perfect balance between courage and caution. Mila reads the signs. Tracks are hours old, heading away. The herd has passed. They can continue safely. But she files the information. Stegodon in this area means good browsing, which means they'll return. Future gathering trips need to account for elephant schedules. They return to camp as afternoon shadows lengthen. 30 pounds of diverse foods carried by 7 small people across miles of difficult terrain. Not glamorous, not the stuff of cave paintings, but this harvest will provide vitamins, minerals, and calories that keep the band healthy. The children help process, learning by doing. How to clean mushrooms without water, precious resource. How to extract maximum nutrition from minimum material. How to store foods that spoil quickly in tropical heat. Each technique represents generations of accumulated wisdom. Gathering wasn't just food collection, Bailey concludes. It was education, social bonding, territorial monitoring, and resource management combined. These small women ranging through forests were the economic engine of survival. As night falls, the band eats Mila's harvest. The bamboo shoots provide fiber, figs bring sweetness, mushrooms add umami to otherwise bland meals. Bird eggs offer complete protein. Everyone eats because gatherers gathered, as they have for 700,000 years. Tomorrow Mila will range again, reading the forest like a beloved book, where every page might contain either sustenance or death. She'll take her daughter, teaching through example the botanical knowledge that keeps hobbits alive. Not hunting dragons, not killing elephants, just quietly, competently gathering the foods that actually fill bellies and the medicines that actually heal wounds. The gathering band, small women doing the enormous job of keeping humanity fed, one fig at a time. The sun hammers down like a fist made of fire. Noon on Flores turns the world into a pizza oven where hobbits are the reluctant toppings. Every predator with sense has found shade, which means only the stupid or desperate are moving. The hobbit band is both. They're crossing the grassland between forest patches, a journey that normally takes an hour, but stretches into ordeal when the temperature hits 95 degrees and you're wearing animal skins. The matriarch made the call. Their cave's water source has gone brackish, and the nearest clean spring requires this traverse. Dehydration or heat stroke. Pick your poison. Midday movement was sometimes necessary but always dangerous, explains physiologist Dr. Hermann Ponce. Homo floresiensis had higher surface area to volume ratios than modern humans. They heated up faster, cooled down slower. Noon was their thermal nightmare. Little Pack is struggling. At 8 years old and 30 pounds, he's all skin and rapid metabolism. His mother watches him like a hawk, recognizing the signs: stumbling gait, flushed face, breathing that's gone shallow. Heat exhaustion is stalking him as surely as any dragon. But they can't stop here. Open grassland offers no shade, no protection, no hope. The adults form a moving shield, positioning themselves to cast shadows on the children. It's not much. When you're 3.5 feet tall, your shadow is more suggestion than shelter. But every degree matters when small bodies are cooking from inside out. Then Marco spots it, a lone tree, ancient and gnarled, rising from the grassland like nature's mercy. But as they approach, the matriarch raises her hand. Stop, listen, smell. That tree is salvation, but it's also bait. Every creature needing shade knows about that tree. Midday shade was contested territory, notes ecologist Dr. Hanneke Meyer. Predators figured out that prey would risk dangerous locations for thermal relief. These trees became killing grounds. The inspection ritual begins. 2 adults circle wide, checking for dragon sign. Fresh scratches on bark would mean recent occupation. Drag marks in dust would indicate current residence. They find old spore, but nothing recent. The tree might be safe. Might. They approach in formation, adults with spears ready, children in the center, everyone alert despite exhaustion. The shade, when they reach it, feels like diving into cool water. Bodies that were overheating begin to stabilize. But relaxation is deadly. This is when things go wrong. A rustling in the canopy makes everyone freeze. Something's up there, something big. Hands tighten on spears as eyes strain upward, trying to pierce the shadows. Then a giant marabou stork peers down, looking annoyed at having its siesta disturbed. It's easily 6 feet tall, could spear a Hobbit child like an hors d'oeuvre, but it's full of carrion and lazy with heat. Today, it chooses discretion. These micro-negotiations happened constantly, Meyer explains. Predator and prey sharing space because environmental pressure overrode hunting instincts. Temporary truces dictated by temperature. They rest, but don't relax. Water is distributed in careful rations. They're still an hour from the spring. Pack gets extra, his small body demanding proportionally more hydration. His mother checks his pupils, feels his pulse. He's recovering but won't make another crossing today without consequences. The matriarch faces a decision. Push forward to water and risk losing Park. Rest longer and risk whatever owns this tree returning. Split the group. Every option carries potentially lethal consequences. This is leadership when you're 3 feet tall and every choice could kill someone you love. She chooses compromise. They'll rest another precious 20 minutes, then move fast for the spring. But first, preparation. The adults strip leaves from low branches, weaving crude head coverings. Not fashion, but function. Any barrier between skull and sun helps. Pack gets a double layer and protests he's not a baby. His mother ignores him. Pride is luxury when survival is uncertain. Their adaptations were behavioral rather than biological, Ponce notes. They couldn't evolve better cooling systems in 700,000 years, so they developed cultural solutions, timing, tactics, technology. 20 minutes pass, like seconds. Time to move. But the landscape has changed. Heat shimmer makes distance deceptive. What looked like solid ground reveals itself as bog. Seasonal wetland that's mostly mud with a skim of water. They'll have to detour, adding dangerous minutes to sun exposure. The detour brings unexpected benefit. The mud, while treacherous, is cooler than baked earth. Several hobbits accidentally stumble, coating themselves with natural sunscreen. Pack brightens at this sanctioned messmaking. His core temperature drops enough to ease his mother's worry, but mud attracts its own problems. Fresh buffalo wallow marks show something large cooled off here recently. Water buffalo aren't actively dangerous, but a startled buffalo is half a ton of panic with horns. And where buffalo wallow, predators watch. They're committed now, no turning back. The spring is close. They can smell water on the breeze, but between them and salvation stretches 50 yards of open ground. No cover, no shade, just baked earth and the possibility that something hungry is watching. The final approach to water was always the most dangerous, Meyer emphasizes. Predators knew prey had no choice. They'd positioned themselves for optimal ambush. It was mathematics, with teeth. The matriarch makes the call. They'll run. Not panic flee, but controlled movement. Adults on the outside, children protected, everyone moving as one organism. If something attacks, the formation might hold long enough for some to reach water, basic, triage, save, who you can. They run. 37 hobbits moving like a single creature across ground that burns through thin foot coverings. Pack stumbles once but is immediately scooped up by an adult, no child left behind. Even if it means adults collapse from the extra burden, nothing attacks. Sometimes the dice roll in your favor. They reach the spring, a limestone pool fed by underground sources, blessed, cool, and clear. The temptation is to plunge in, but discipline holds. Predators often hunt in water. They drink first fast, then establish defensive positions before allowing children to play in the shallows. Survival required constant vigilance. Ponce concludes. Even relief came with risk. They could never fully relax, never completely safe. Every moment required active survival. Park recovers in the water, his body temperature finally normal. His mother watches him play, knowing they'll have to cross back eventually. But for now, they've beaten the midday sun. Small victory for small people in a world that wants them dead. The spring is theirs for precious hours. They'll rest, rehydrate, prepare for the return journey in late afternoon, when shadows offer some protection. But they've learned again what every hobbit knows. Midday in Monsterland is Russian roulette with temperature instead of bullets. Sometimes you win by not playing. Sometimes you have no choice but to pull the trigger and hope the chamber is empty. Today, they lived. Tomorrow, the sun rises again, and the game continues. 3 feet tall in a world where even shade can kill you, but still here, still fighting, still proving that size matters less than stubborn refusal to quit. The monsters own midnight. The sun owns noon. Hobbits survive in the margins, dancing between dangers, finding life in the spaces between death. Young Tico's fingers are bleeding again. The volcanic stone doesn't care that he's only 10 years old, that his hands are smaller than the rocks he's trying to shape. It only knows physics, force, angles, and the unforgiving reality that mistakes in stone are written in blood. His grandfather watches without intervening, not from cruelty, but from necessity. In 2 years, Tico will be old enough to hunt. If he can't make tools by then, he's liability instead of asset. The old man learned this way 40 years ago, bleeding his education into existence one cut at a time. Toolmaking apprenticeship was brutal by modern standards, observes Dr. Dietrich Stout, who studies stone tool cognition. Children started young because the neural pathways needed decades to develop. It was like teaching violin if failing a note could sever your fingers. Tico tries again. The hammerstone feels huge in his child hands, but there are no smaller options. Hobbits made do with what geology provided. He strikes the core at what he thinks is the right angle. The stone shatters wrong, sending sharp fragments everywhere. One catches his cheek, drawing a line of red. He doesn't cry. Crying doesn't make tools. His grandfather finally moves, but not to comfort. Instead, he takes an identical core and demonstrates again. The angle, the force. The way you read stone grain, like others read weather. His movements are economical, practiced, perfect. A lifetime of muscle memory in every strike. The flake that results is exactly what he intended. Sharp, symmetrical, useful. Watch his wrist, the old man says through gestures and simple words. Their proto-language can't convey complex instructions, but hands can show what tongues can't tell. Power comes from here, not shoulder. The cognitive load was staggering, Stout explains. They were teaching physics, geology, and engineering to children whose brains were still developing, without writing, without detailed language. Just repetition and bloody fingers. Tico watches, absorbs, tries again. This time, the angle is better. The stone doesn't shatter but doesn't flake either. Progress measured in smaller failures. His pile of broken attempts grows, each mistake a lesson. His hands are learning even if his mind doesn't understand yet. Around them, the cave's tool-making area buzzes with activity. Other children practice with cheaper stone, while adults work precious materials. The hierarchy is clear. Masters get the best volcanic glass. Journeymen work standard tough. Apprentices make do with whatever won't be missed, if destroyed. A girl named Siri, 2 years older and already competent, works beside Tico. Her movements show she's crossed the threshold from conscious effort to muscle memory. She's not thinking about each strike anymore. Her hands know what her brain trained them to do. She produces 3 usable flakes, while Tico is still fighting his first success. The gender equality in tool-making was remarkable, notes Dr. Shara Bailey. Both sexes learned because survival didn't care about chromosomes. A woman who couldn't make tools was as dead as a man who couldn't. Tico's grandfather adjusts his grip, not roughly, but firmly. Small corrections that will compound over years into expertise. The angle of his thumb, the way his palm cups the stone, details that separate tools from rubble. Each adjustment costs the old man energy he doesn't have to spare, but knowledge dies if not transmitted. Finally, success. A flake drops away clean and sharp. Not perfect, one edge is irregular, the thickness varies. But usable. Tico stares at it like he's created life itself. In a way, he has. This piece of stone, shaped by his will and skill, might one day save his life, or someone else's. First successful flake was a rite of passage. Bailey observes, modern parents celebrate first words or steps. Hobbit parents celebrated first tools. It marked transition from consumer to contributor. But making one flake doesn't make you a tool maker. Now comes the harder lesson. Consistency. Can he repeat the success? Understanding lives in repetition, not single victories. His grandfather sets out 5 more cores. The message is clear. Do it again and again, until your hands don't need your brain's permission. The afternoon wears on. Tico's pile of successes grows slowly beside his mountain of failures. Each good flake is examined, critiqued, compared. Too thick here, wrong angle there, sharp enough but fragile. The standards are exacting because the stakes are life-defining. A bad tool at the wrong moment means death. Siri offers quiet encouragement, showing him how she holds difficult stones. The apprentice network is strong. Today's students become tomorrow's teachers. Everyone remembers bleeding fingers and impossible stones. Everyone wants the next generation to succeed because group survival depends on it. The social learning was as important as technical skill. Stout emphasizes they were building communities of practice, shared knowledge networks that preserved and transmitted information across generations. As light fades, Tico's grandfather performs the day's final lesson. He takes Tico's best flake, the one the boy is proudest of, and demonstrates hafting, how plant fibers wrap the base, how tree resin secures the binding, how a simple flake becomes a functional knife. The transformation amazes Tico. His creation has become something greater. But the lesson isn't over. The grandfather then uses the knife to process meat from the morning hunt. He shows how different angles work for different cuts, how the edge wears with use, how to feel when sharpness fades. Tool making doesn't end with production. It includes maintenance, use, and eventual replacement. The full cycle took years to master, Bailey notes, from reading stone quality to producing tools to using them effectively to knowing when to discard. Each stage had its own complexity. As darkness falls, Tico's hands are swollen and cut. He's produced maybe 6 usable flakes from 50 attempts. In modern terms, that's 12% success rate, failure by any measure. But in Paleolithic terms, it's progress. Yesterday he produced none. Tomorrow he might make 8. Success is gradient, not binary. His grandfather examines the boy's hands in firelight, except there is no firelight because hobbits can't make fire. In the darkness, he feels the cuts, assesses damage by touch. Nothing needs intervention. The stone has marked Tycho, but not maimed him. These are educators' wounds, the price of knowledge in a world without textbooks. Every master toolmaker bore scars, Stout concludes. Their hands were libraries of mistakes survived. You could read someone's expertise level by their accumulated damage. Tycho falls asleep, still feeling the weight of hammerstone in his palm. His dreams feature flying flakes and perfect strikes. His hands twitch, practicing motions his conscious mind is still learning. Tomorrow will bring more stones, more blood, more failures, but also more success. Because in a world where you're 3 feet tall and everything wants to eat you, the ability to turn rocks into razors isn't just skill, it's salvation. And Tycho is learning, one bloody finger at a time, how to save himself and others. The apprentice becomes the master through decades of deliberate practice. The master ensures survival by creating new apprentices. The cycle continues, written in stone and scarred flesh, keeping hobbits alive 1 flake at a time. His grandfather watches him sleep, remembering his own bloody childhood, his own impossible stones, knowing that someday Tycho will watch his own grandchild bleed knowledge into existence. The tools change hands, but the teaching endures. Stone Age education at its most fundamental. Learn or die. Bleed today to live tomorrow. Make tools or become food. No participation trophies in the Paleolithic. Just scarred hands and the skills to survive another day. The birds know first. Every species on Flores suddenly takes wing. Parrots, cockatoos, even the giant marabou storks that usually move only for meals. The sky fills with fleeing feathers, while 37 hobbits stand confused in their cave, wondering why breakfast has turned into an aerial exodus. Then comes the sound. Not thunder. Thunder has rhythm. This is the mountain clearing its throat. A bass note so low, it bypasses ears and goes straight to bones. Flores' volcanic spine is waking up, and everything living understands except the hobbits who are about to get their harsh education. Living on an active volcanic island meant constant negotiation with geology, explains volcanologist Dr. Ralph Gerteser. Flores sits on the ring of fire for Homo Floresiensis. Eruptions weren't disasters. They were weather. Deadly weather that reshaped their world every few generations. The matriarch feels it through her feet first. The limestone floor develops a subtle vibration, like a cat purring with planetary lungs. She's 40 years old, ancient by Hobbit standards, and her grandmother told stories of the last big shake. But stories don't prepare you for the real thing. Nothing does. The first real tremor drops everyone to hands and knees, not from falling, but from instinct. Lower center of gravity means harder to topple. The cave that has sheltered them for generations suddenly feels like a mouth preparing to chew. Stalactites that took millennia to form crack and fall like stone rain. Earthquake. Someone manages to click whistle, though the word is redundant. When the earth itself moves, vocabulary becomes optional. What matters is the next decision. Stay in a cave that might collapse or flee outside where volcanic bombs might fall. Neither option comes with guarantees. Their decision trees were impossibly complex. Gerteser notes. No seismographs to measure intensity, no news reports warning of eruption, just instinct and ancestral memory guiding life or death choices. A child screams as a chunk of ceiling narrowly misses her. That decides it. The matriarch shouts the evacuation order, sharp clicks that cut through panic. They've drilled this before, passing down procedures through generations. Grab tools first, irreplaceable. Then food, if time allows. Then run. Always. They pour from the cave like water from a burst dam. Outside, the world has gone mad. Trees sway without wind. The ground rolls in waves that shouldn't exist in solid matter. In the distance, the mountain wears a new hat, a black column of ash rising toward the stratosphere, but outside brings new terrors. The dragon that usually sunbathes on the rocks is gone. Even Komodo dragons know when to relocate, but the ground cracks reveal fresh dangers. Steam vents open like earth acne, hissing superheated vapor that could cook Hobbit flesh in seconds. One appears right where children were playing yesterday. Volcanic islands constantly reshape themselves, explains geologist Dr. Paul Goldberg. New vents, altered drainage, reformed landscapes. Each eruption rewrote the map. Homo Floresiensis had to learn new geography after every major event. The ash cloud spreads like a grey umbrella opening over paradise. First comes the smell, sulfur and hell having a chemistry experiment. Then the temperature drops as ash blocks sunlight. Finally, the fallout begins. Not snow, but powder that burns eyes, clogs lungs and turns the world into a grayscale nightmare. The hobbits understand they need shelter, but not the cave. Temporary structures, away from cliffs that might collapse, away from vents that might open. They work with desperate efficiency, using broad leaves as umbrellas, creating lean-tos that might survive both ashfall and aftershocks. Their engineering response was remarkable, Goldberg notes. No permanent structures because the Earth wasn't permanent. Everything designed to be temporary, movable, replaceable. Architecture for an unstable world. Day turns to twilight as ash thickens. Breathing becomes labor. The hobbits tie leaves across faces, primitive masks that barely help. Children cough constantly. Elders wheeze with each breath. The volcanic particles are microscopic knives slicing lung tissue with every inhalation. Water becomes critical and scarce. Ash contaminates every open source, turning streams into grey sludge. The springs they rely on clog with debris. Even if they could reach water, drinking ash-laden liquid would be suicide by geology. They're forced to catch rain when it comes, hoping volcanic gases haven't poisoned that too. 3 days pass in grey purgatory. The Earth still trembles occasionally, aftershocks like the planet hiccuping. Each one drops everyone flat again, hearts racing, waiting to see if this tremor becomes the killing quake. Sleep is impossible when your bed might open and swallow you. The psychological impact was crushing, observes Dr. Chris Clarkson. Imagine 3-year-olds experiencing their stable world literally shaking apart. The trauma shaped entire generations. PTSD isn't modern. It's as old as consciousness. Food becomes the next crisis. Can't hunt when prey has fled. Can't gather when plants are buried under ash. Can't fish when streams run grey with volcanic mud. The hobbits resort to emergency rations, dried meat they hope never to need, roots that taste like survival rather than food. But Floris provides unexpected mercy. On day 4, rain comes. Not gentle drops, but tropical deluge that washes ash from leaves, clears stream beds, provides fresh water. The hobbits emerge from shelters like survivors of an apocalypse, which they are. Covered in grey paste, coughing mud, but alive. The landscape has transformed. Familiar landmarks are gone, buried or shifted. A stream that ran east now runs south. The grove where they gathered bamboo is under tons of volcanic debris. The path to their secondary cave is blocked by a new cliff that wasn't there last week. Every eruption forced total environmental relearning, Clarkson emphasizes. Imagine your entire neighborhood rearranged overnight. Streets moved, stores relocated, but with lethal consequences for confusion. They had to explore and map their world anew after each event. Recovery takes months. The ash fertilizes eventually, creating plant blooms that attract prey. But first comes the dying. Weakened elders who can't clear their lungs. Children whose small bodies couldn't handle the toxins. Pregnant females who miscarry from stress. Each small grave dug in poisoned soil reminds them that the earth gives and takes without conscience. The matriarch leads scouting expeditions, learning the new landscape. This hill is new, a void, until stable. That valley filled with debris, possible future gathering spot. The cave survived, but with new cracks suggesting weakness. They'll need to find alternatives before the next shake. Survival required extraordinary adaptability, Gertieser concludes. Not just to climate or predators, but to the ground itself. They lived on a planet actively trying to kill them and lasted 700,000 years. That's not luck. That's mastery. 6 months later, life has found new normal. The hobbits have mapped their reformed world, found new water sources, established new gathering grounds. Children play on cooled lava that was molten death half a year ago. The earth sleeps again, but everyone knows it's temporary. Because on Flores, the ground beneath your feet is just another predator. It doesn't hunt daily like dragons or seasonally like storms. It waits years, decades even, then reminds everyone who really owns this island. Not the hobbits who scurry across its surface, but the molten heart that beats below. They've survived another geological tantrum. There will be more. The mountain promises that with occasional rumbles and sulfur breath. But hobbits are nothing if not persistent. They'll adapt to the new landscape, thrive until the next reshaping, then adapt. Again, 3 feet tall on an island that periodically explodes. It's not the life anyone would choose, but it's the life they've mastered one earthquake at a time, proving that sometimes the biggest enemy isn't what hunts you, but what you stand on. The earth shook, the hobbits endured. Tomorrow it might shake again. They'll endure that too, because when your world regularly tries to kill you, survival becomes less about winning and more about refusing to lose. The mountain can throw tantrums. Hobbits will wait them out, clean up the mess, and continue living. It's what they do. It's all they've ever done. And they're extraordinarily good at it. Cinta watches him from across the cave, pretending to work on her basket weaving. Koru is 17. Shoulders broad by hobbit standards, with scars that tell stories of successful hunts. He's repairing his spear, muscles moving under skin with practiced efficiency. She's 15, ready for pairing, and her body knows it even if their limited language can't express the feeling. The matchmaking begins subtly. Her grandmother, ancient at 38, notices the looking and starts engineering accidents. Cinta needs help carrying water. Send Koru. Koru's spear binding needs plant fibers. Have Cinta gather them. The old woman remembers her own pairing, arranged by elders who understood that love in the Paleolithic meant survival partnerships, not romance novels. Mating among Homo Floresiensis was pragmatic, but not loveless, explains anthropologist Dr. Helen Fisher. Small populations meant every pairing had genetic consequences, but within those constraints, affection, attraction, and bonding flourished. The band has 4 unmated females and 6 unmated males, good odds by Hobbit standards. But genetics complicate things. Cinta and 2 males are siblings, another male is her first cousin. The realistic mate pool shrinks to 3, and one of those is Maku, whose lazy habits make him unattractive despite no blood relation. That leaves Koru and Tilu. Tilu is older, an experienced hunter, a safe choice, but Cinta's eyes follow Koru. He moves differently than others. Fluid where they're choppy, thoughtful where they're reactive. When he killed his first giant rat at 13, he thanked it before butchering. That moment of grace marked him in her mind. Mate selection wasn't casual. Fisher notes, with high infant mortality and short lifespans, choosing correctly meant your genes survived. Choose wrong, and your lineage ended. Evolution made them excellent judges of character. The courtship ritual begins with gifts. Koru leaves a perfect flake tool where Cinta will find it. Not just any tool, one made from rare obsidian traded from 3 valleys away. Hours of work for something she could make herself, but that's not the point. The point is effort invested, skill demonstrated, resources spent on someone deemed worthy. She reciprocates with food. Not openly, that would be too forward. But when serving the communal meal, Koru's portion contains the choicest bits, the liver that's easiest to chew, the marrow from the largest bone, messages delivered in calories received in gratitude, the cave watchers with interest. Small populations meant everyone's business was everyone's business. The children giggle when Cinta and Koru accidentally touch hands reaching for the same stone. Elders nod approval. This pairing makes genetic sense. Even Tilu seems relieved, his eyes already turning toward a female from the band 2 valleys over. Privacy didn't exist, explains Dr. Shara Bailey. Courtship happened in full view of parents, siblings, grandparents. Every interaction was public. It created accountability, no false promises when everyone's watching. Physical attraction plays its role despite limited options. Koru stands 4 feet tall, towering by Hobbit standards. His proportions suggest strength without bulk. Cinta appreciates the way he moves, economical and purposeful. She's noticed his hygiene habits too. Daily washing when water allows. Teeth cleaned with fibrous sticks. In a world without deodorant, these things matter. But attraction goes beyond physical. She's watched him with children, patient when teaching, gentle when correcting. Seen him share meat with the elderly without being asked. Noticed how he checks cave security without prompting. These behaviors signal good mate, good father, good partner for survival's long haul. The formal proposal comes at full moon, not because of romance. Full moons mean maximum visibility for nighttime activities. Koru approaches Cinta's family area with gifts. A hafted knife for her father, bone needles for her mother, and for Cinta herself, a necklace of river shells. Each shell perfectly matched, holes drilled with obsessive precision. Gift-giving demonstrated multiple qualities, Bailey notes. Resource access, skill level, future planning ability. That shell necklace said, I can provide, I can create, I think ahead. Evolution's way of checking credit scores. Her father examines the knife, testing sharpness, balance, hafting security. Her mother inspects the needles for straightness and strength. They're not just accepting gifts, they're evaluating their daughter's potential partner through his craftsmanship. The items pass inspection. But Cinta has agency too. She could refuse, though social pressure makes that difficult. Instead, she accepts with her own gift, a water container made from a giant gourd, sealed with tree resin, decorated with ochre patterns, practical but beautiful, showing her skills complement his. The pairing ceremony is simple by necessity. No elaborate rituals in a world where survival consumes most energy. The band gathers at sunset. Elders speak, not words their simple language can't support, but gestures and sounds conveying approval, advice, warnings. Koru and Cinta share food, feeding each other to symbolize mutual support. They're now paired. Marriage was economic partnership first, emotional bond second, Fisher explains, but the order didn't prevent deep attachment. Survival partnerships often became profound love through shared struggles. Their first night together happens in full view of the band. Privacy is impossible when 37 people share a cave. They've hung a hide for visual barriers, but sounds carry. The children are hushed by adults, taught early that some activities require respectful ignoring. The couple manages intimacy despite the audience. Driven by hormones older than consciousness, morning brings new dynamics. Cinta moves her sleeping area next to Koru's. Their tools intermingle. Their food shares combine. They begin operating as an economic unit within the larger band. Their contributions pooled, then redistributed. It's partnership at its most fundamental. Two people improving odds by joining forces. Pair bonding doubled survival chances, Bailey calculates. Shared labor, mutual protection, distributed risk. Plus the obvious, reproduction to continue the species. Love was evolution's way of making necessary partnerships bearable. 3 months later, Cinta knows she's pregnant. The nausea tells her first, then the missed bleeding. Koru's pride is visible, despite their language lacking words for the feeling. He hunts harder, takes extra risks for better meat. She gathers closer to cave, avoiding dangerous climbs. The band adjusts, everyone understanding that new life means redistributed labor. Their bond deepens through shared work. Hunting together, her driving prey toward his spear, gathering as a team, him climbing for high fruit while she processes below. Tool making side by side, teaching each other techniques. Love grows from compatibility, fertilized by respect, watered with daily cooperation. Long-term pairing required continuous negotiation, Fisher notes. No divorce lawyers in the Paleolithic. Problems got solved or someone died, usually both. It created strong pressure for compatibility. When labor comes 9 months later, Koru holds her hand through contractions that threaten to split her tiny frame. The band's midwife, an elder who's delivered dozens, guides the process. Hours of agony produce a tiny girl, maybe 2 pounds, who announces her arrival with squeaks that bring tears to battle-hardened eyes. The baby changes everything. Koru and Cinta are no longer just paired. They're parents. Their love includes this new life, depending entirely on their competence. They take turns watching her sleep, marveling at miniature fingers, planning her future in a world that kills most children. But that's tomorrow's worry. Tonight, they're a family. 3 tiny people against a world of giants, bound by love that started with looks across a cave and grew into something worth dying for. The baby feeds, ignorant of dragons and earthquakes, knowing only that warmth and milk exist when she cries. Love among Homo Floresiensis wasn't luxury, Fisher concludes. It was survival strategy that happened to include affection. They proved that 3 feet tall, with chimp-sized brains, could still form bonds that conquered worlds. Cinta watches Koru watching their daughter, seeing in his scarred face the same wonder she feels. They don't have words for love, but they have something better. Lives intertwined so completely that separation would mean death for all 3. Love measured not in poetry, but in shared calories, mutual protection, and the miracle of their daughter breathing between them. Tomorrow will bring dragons and hunger and the endless struggle of being small in a large world. But tonight, love is enough. Love is everything. Love is why hobbits survived 700,000 years, one carefully chosen partnership at a time. The baby sleeps. Her parents stay awake, guarding her dreams, proving that love among the little people was perhaps the biggest thing of all. The meeting has no agenda because their language has no word for agenda. It starts as all important hobbit gatherings do, with everyone simultaneously talking, clicking, and gesturing until the cacophony reaches critical mass and naturally subsides into something resembling order. The issue is life or death. Their cave's water source has turned brackish. The backup spring shows fresh dragon tracks, and the rainy season ends in 2 weeks. Where to move, whether to split the band. Who decides when everyone's equal and language can't convey complex arguments? Decision-making without hierarchical language is democracy in its purest form, observes linguist Dr. Daniel Everett. No rhetoric to sway, no eloquence to manipulate. Just raw information exchange and consensus through exhaustion. The matriarch doesn't lead by title. Hobbits have no word for leader. She influences through experience. At 41, she survived more crises than anyone. When she click whistles and gestures, others listen not from obligation, but from the practical recognition that she's usually right. She proposes through pantomime. Scout 3 valleys west, where her grandmother once found year-round water, but Koru objects with his own performance, indicating those valleys now belong to another band. Territory disputes without words require creative communication. He acts out meeting strangers, conflict, retreat. Young Tico suggests splitting up, half stay, half search for new territory. His gestures are energetic, optimistic. The elders respond with synchronized head-shaking that needs no translation. They've seen split bands before. Usually only one half survives, sometimes neither. Their proto-language forced physical democracy, Everett notes. You couldn't dominate discussion through verbal skill. Every opinion required full-body commitment. It leveled the playing field between articulate and action-oriented individuals. The debate continues through demonstration. Sinter mines finding water 2 valleys south. But Marku performs an elaborate death scene featuring what everyone recognizes as the giant snake that lives there. Each suggestion spawns counter-performances until the cave resembles experimental theater. Children watch from the edges, learning governance through observation. They see adults disagree without violence, compromise without losing face, build consensus without formal voting. It's civics education through interpretive dance. The breakthrough comes from unexpected source. Pack, the 8-year-old who nearly died from heat exhaustion, toddles into the center and performs his own story. He shows the path they took during his crisis, the muddy detour, the spring they finally reached. But then, he adds something new, continuing past that spring to a place the adults haven't explored. Children's perspectives carried weight because survival didn't respect age, explains anthropologist Dr. Polly Wiesner. If a child noticed something adults missed, ignoring them could be fatal. Their council structure acknowledged expertise wherever it emerged. The adults exchanged glances. The boy might be onto something. That area was avoided because of the buffalo herd, but buffalo are seasonal. If they've moved on, it could be ideal. Water, shelter, and unclaimed territory. The matriarch processes this information visibly. Her face shows consideration, calculation, decision. She stands and performs the action that will commit 37 lives to an 8-year-old's observation. She points to Park, then to herself, then mimes walking together to scout. The band erupts in what sounds like chaos, but is actually agreement, multiple conversations through gesture, people already planning what to pack, who scouts when. The decision has emerged not through decree but through exhaustive consensus. Their meetings took hours because every nuance required physical demonstration, Wiesner notes. But the result was buy-in modern democracy's envy. Everyone understood the decision because they'd help birth it. As the council disperses, small groups continue discussing details. The toolmakers gesture about what to prioritize. The mothers sign about child safety during relocation. The hunters demonstrate concern about moving during elephant season. Each sub-meeting feeds back to the whole. The next morning, Puck leads the scouting party with pride that transcends language. His suggestion survived the council of small voices where volume mattered less than wisdom. The matriarch follows. trusting a child's memory with everyone's future. They find water where part indicated, a limestone spring hidden by new growth, missed by previous scouts who didn't think to look behind the thorn barrier. It's perfect, defensible, reliable, unclaimed. The 8-year-old has saved his band through observation and the courage to speak up in a council where everyone's voice carries equal weight. Modern democracy claims ancient Greek origins, Everett concludes, but 700,000 years ago, Homo Floresiensis was running town halls where everyone spoke and consensus emerged through exhaustive interaction. They couldn't articulate democratic principles, but they lived them daily. The band moves within the week, following the route Pack demonstrated. 37 hobbits relocating based on an 8-year-old's observation, validated through community discussion, implemented through collective action. No votes were counted because none were needed. The Council of Small Voices had spoken with one voice, assembled from many. In a world where language couldn't dominate, action spoke loudest. And sometimes the smallest voice, attached to the smallest person, said the biggest truth. Democracy, it turns out, doesn't require words. Just the willingness to listen when someone, anyone, has something worth saying. Old Mira holds her daughter's skull with the reverence modern people reserve for holy relics. 3 months dead, the bones have been cleaned by beetles and time, ready for the reading. The rest of the band gathers close, understanding they're about to witness the intersection of forensics and faith. Mira is the band's bone reader, inheriting the role from her mother as her mother did before her. In a world without writing, bones become books. Each skeleton a story, each fracture a chapter, each tooth a page of dietary history. She reads the dead to teach the living. Bone reading was primitive forensic anthropology, explains Dr. Tim White from Berkeley. They couldn't articulate what they were doing scientifically, but they were conducting post-mortem examinations that revealed crucial survival information. The skull tells its story to those who know the language. That discoloration near the temporal bone, infection that probably caused the killing headaches in her final days. The worn spot on the jaw, years of processing plant fibers suggesting she'd found a reliable source worth recording. The cavity in the third molar. She'd been eating something new, sweeter than their usual diet. Mira gestures to her apprentice, her 13-year-old niece, who will someday inherit this grim but vital responsibility. Together they examine the postcranial bones, laid out in anatomical position. The right femur shows healed breaks from a childhood fall. The left shoulder bears arthritis from repetitive motion. Each mark maps a life lived hard, but not harder than usual. They were building epidemiological databases without knowing it. White notes, tracking disease patterns, injury frequencies, dietary changes. Information that helped future generations avoid similar fates. The most important discovery comes from the ribs. Tiny marks, almost invisible, circling several bones. Mira has seen these before. Her grandmother showed her similar marks on ancient bones, explaining they meant long sickness that spread through breath. The woman had been isolated in her final days, but perhaps not soon enough. The bone reader performs a pantomime warning, showing coughing, pointing to the marks, then gesturing separation from the group. Everyone understands. If others develop breathing problems, they'll know to isolate quickly. One death teaching prevention of many. But bone reading goes beyond medicine. Mira arranges the skeleton in sleeping position, then places beside it the woman's tools, worn smooth from use. She's creating a teaching display that will last until the bones themselves need burial. Children will study this arrangement, learning tool grips from wear patterns, understanding work postures from joint stress. Every skeleton became a university, observes Dr. Clark Spencer Larson. They preserved teaching specimens that transmitted technical knowledge across generations. Bones showing proper tool use were as valuable as the tools themselves. The ritual deepens as Mira produces older bones, ancestral remains kept for exactly this purpose. She arranges them chronologically, creating a timeline of adaptation. Here, a skull from 20 years ago, showing the dental wear from pre-drought diet. There, arm bones from the generation that survived the Great Earthquake, hypertrophied from rebuilding. Each skeleton contributes its verse to an epic poem of survival. The child who died from eating the wrong mushroom, his bones still teaching plant identification through tragedy. The elder who lived longest, her skeleton revealing the postural adaptations that prevented common injuries. The pregnant woman whose pelvis showed why certain positions aided delivery. They created anatomical libraries, Larson explains. Each bone collection represented accumulated medical knowledge. Destroying these would be like burning textbooks in a world without publishing. The apprentice practices her own readings, guided by Mira's experienced hands. Feel how this bone is lighter, calcium loss from poor diet. See this healed fracture. It's set wrong, teaching us better splinting techniques. Notice these tooth scratches. She was left-handed, holding things in her mouth while working. Every detail matters when bones are your only books. As night approaches, Mira performs the final ceremony. She'll keep the skull for teaching but bury the remaining bones with honor. The woman's knowledge has been extracted, preserved, transmitted. Her death continues teaching, her bones joining the ancestral library that keeps hobbits alive. The burial is simple but profound. Bones arranged in fetal position, returning to earth as they emerged from womb. Ochre sprinkled to mark the spot. Not for spiritual reasons their simple minds might not grasp, but for practical marking. This grave contains a teacher. Disturb it only for desperate learning. Bone reading represented the birth of medical education. White concludes, they turned death into curriculum, tragedy into teaching moments. Every skeleton was simultaneously patient and professor. The band disperses quietly, each carrying new knowledge. Parents examine their children with fresh eyes, watching for early signs of the lung sickness. Tool users adjust their grips to avoid the arthritis patterns they saw. Everyone internalizes lessons written in calcium and carved by time. Mira cleans her hands and checks on her next patient, an elder showing the breathing problems the bones warned about. She isolates him gently, applying what the dead woman taught through her marked ribs. Perhaps he'll survive because she didn't. In a world without doctors, the dead became physicians. Without schools, skeletons served as teachers. Without books, bones became libraries. The bone readers were librarians, coroners, and prophets rolled into one, reading the past, to write the future. Tomorrow, someone else will die. Their bones will join the teaching collection, their death adding another volume to the encyclopedia of survival. It's grim education, but it works. For 700,000 years, the bone readers kept their people alive by listening to the dead. The skull rests in Mira's keeping, its empty socket seeing more in death than they ever did in life. Through the bone reader's interpretation, the woman speaks across the grave, her final words written in calcium. Learn from my ending, live past my limits, let my bones be your books. In the darkness, Mira touches her own skull, wondering what stories it will tell when her apprentice holds it up to teach, wondering if the lessons will be worth the living that writes them. The sun bleeds orange across Flores' skyline, and every hobbit feels the ancient urgency. 15 minutes until darkness. 15 minutes to transform from free-ranging foragers into fortress defenders. The twilight ritual begins with the precision of military drill, refined over 30,000 generations. Maku counts heads first, the sacred arithmetic that means everyone made it through another day. 35, 36. Where's Lila? Hearts stop until her voice pipes up from behind the water vessels. 37. Complete. The night can't claim what it can't separate. Twilight was their most dangerous transition, explains chronobiologist Dr. Russell Foster. Diurnal vision failing, nocturnal predators emerging. They had maybe 20 minutes, when neither species had advantage. Every second counted. The children know their role. Gather fuel for the fires they cannot make. It sounds insane, but dry grass and leaves piled at strategic points serve purposes beyond burning. They create noise barriers. Anything approaching will rustle. They provide insulation against cave walls that leach heat. Most importantly, they give terrified children something to do besides imagine monsters. Water vessels move inside the perimeter. No one drinks after dark because no one travels to refill. Each container is checked, covered with leaves against contamination. The placement matters, accessible but not where panicked movement might spill precious liquid. Details that seem obsessive until you realize mistakes mean death. Their spatial organization was extraordinary. Foster notes, every item had a twilight position. Tools within reach, but not underfoot. Food elevated against scavengers. Everything accessible by touch because darkness would be absolute. The latrine situation requires delicate handling. They've dug channels leading outside, but those become vulnerability points. Young Tico and his brother work quickly to place thorn barriers across the openings, enough deterrent to slow small intruders, not enough to prevent desperate bathroom trips. It's engineering balanced on the edge of dignity and survival. Food disappears into sealed containers, not refrigeration. They have no concept of cold storage, but covered pots and wrapped bundles that might confuse scavenger noses for precious hours. The giant rats are clever, but every barrier buys time to react. In the arithmetic of darkness, seconds save lives. The tool check begins. Each adult examines their weapons by failing light. Spear point secure, cutting edges accessible. The muscle memory of finding your blade in pitch black might be the only thing between you and whatever finds you first. They arrange tools in personal patterns, each hobbit's unique system for blind navigation. Modern humans underestimate haptic memory, explains neuroscientist Dr. Erin Hecht. They navigated by touch with precision we reserve for reading Braille. Every tool placement was a letter in a tactile alphabet of survival. Cinta nurses her baby one last time in visible light, knowing night feedings will be touch-guided affairs. She positions moss for quick diaper changes, arranges her sleeping space to maximize protection. The baby doesn't understand that darkness brings death, but she absorbs her mother's tension through quickened heartbeat and tightened embraces. The defenders take position. Not everyone sleeps. That luxury belongs to species with fire. The strongest adults arrange themselves between the vulnerable and the cave entrance. They'll doze in shifts, but someone always watches, always listens, always stands between the band and the darkness that wants in. Grandfather Echo performs his nightly territory marking. Too old to fight, he contributes through chemistry, urinating at strategic points around the cave entrance, creating a scent barrier that announces occupied territory to creatures that read smell like newspapers. It's unglamorous but effective. Many predators prefer undefended meals. Scent marking wasn't just animal behavior, notes zoologist Dr. Craig Stanford. Humans retain territorial marking instincts. Homo floresiensis weaponized them. Their urine contained pheromones announcing group size, health status, defensive readiness. The children receive final instructions through gesture and touch. If you wake, don't move. If you must move, feel for the guide rope. If something enters, freeze. Movement attracts predators. If adults fight, stay down. Simple rules that mean the difference between orphans and families. As last light fades, The matriarch performs the ritual that replaces what fire-using humans would do with flame. She takes aromatic leaves, citrus and basil, crushing them to release oils, not for mystical protection but practical repellent. Insects carry disease, and without smoke to deter them, chemistry must suffice. The final moments before full dark are storytelling time, not elaborate narratives. Their language can't support complex plots, but rhythmic vocalizations that serve multiple purposes. They mask individual breathing that might attract predators. They maintain group cohesion through audio contact. Most importantly, they remind everyone they're not alone. Twilight rituals were psychological warfare against fear. Foster explains, they couldn't eliminate darkness, so they ritualized the transition, made it predictable, controllable. Fear of the unknown became fear of the known, which is manageable. Full darkness arrives like a curtain dropping. The cave that felt spacious in daylight shrinks to the size of their combined body heat. 37 people become one organism, with dozens of eyes that see nothing, hundreds of ears that hear everything, and one goal: survive until dawn. The twilight ritual is complete. They've done everything possible to prepare for 12 hours of vulnerability. No fire to warm them, no light to reveal threats. Just darkness pressing in and the knowledge that they've survived this transition 700,000 times before. Somewhere in the black, a dragon moves, a giant rat scratches, an owl calls with a voice like death. But inside the cave, 37 hearts beat in rhythm, following the twilight ritual that transforms prey into survivors. One terrifying night at a time. The baby whimpers once, quickly soothed. Even she understands. Twilight is over. Darkness owns the world, and silence is the only shield they have. The ritual works because it must, because without it, hobbits would be memories instead of miracle survivors who proved that preparation can replace power, that small people with big plans can outlast. The dark night falls. The hobbits endure. Tomorrow's twilight will demand the same ritual, the same precision, the same desperate hope that darkness takes only what light fails to protect. Garu's eyes burn from staring into nothing. 6 hours into his watch, the darkness has weight, texture, almost taste. He's 23, the band's best night guardian, blessed with hearing that catches dragon breath at 50 paces, and cursed with imagination that turns every sound into approaching death. He sits at the cave mouth, back pressed against limestone, spear across his knees. Not for fighting. You can't fight what you can't see. The spear is psychological comfort, at last resort suicide prevention. Better to die on your own terms than be dragged into darkness screaming. Night, watching without fire, was sensory deprivation torture, explains sleep researcher Dr. Matthew Walker. They couldn't use vision, their primary sense. Everything depended on acoustic processing and spatial memory. It was like being a submarine operator before sonar. A scratching sound from the left. Garu's head swivels, ears triangulating. Too rhythmic for random noise. Too light for dragon claws. Probably a monitor lizard investigating the latrine channels. Probably. He clicks his tongue softly, the agreed signal for alert, but not alarmed. Throughout the cave, sleepers adjust slightly, hands finding spear shafts. The protocol is brutal in its simplicity. 1 click means awareness. 2 clicks mean imminent threat. 3 clicks mean grab children and retreat to the deep chambers. No clicks for 30 seconds means the watcher is probably dead and everyone should act accordingly. The monitor lizard, if that's what it is, scrapes along the wall. Garu tracks its movement through sound, building a mental map. It's following the scent trail from evening urination, investigating whether the marking hobbit might be available for eating. Finding only smell, it continues past. Garu exhales breath he didn't know he was holding. Their acoustic abilities were extraordinary. Notes Dr. Brian Fry. Modern humans in darkness panic within minutes. Homo floresiensis night watchers sat motionless for hours, building detailed pictures through sound alone. They were echolocating without producing echoes. The worst part isn't the danger, it's the boredom. 6 hours of hypervigilance with nothing happening destroys focus. The mind wanders, conjuring threats from memory. Every dragon he's ever seen parades through imagination. Every close call replays with worse endings. The darkness becomes a screen for projecting fears. To combat this, Garu practices the mental exercises passed down through generations of watchers. Count breathing, his own, and the sleepers he can hear. Map the cave by memory, touching each feature mentally. Recite the water sources in order of distance. Anything to keep the mind anchored in reality rather than drifting into terror. A new sound, heavier, deliberate. Something large is circling the cave entrance, testing defenses. Garu's pulse accelerates, but his body remains still. Movement is death. Sound is death. Fear smell is death. He becomes stone with ears, tracking the creature's position through footfalls. It's a dragon. The weight and gait are unmistakable, but its behavior is off. Not hunting pattern, but investigating pattern. It knows hobbits are here, but isn't committed to attack. Maybe it fed recently. Maybe it's comparing effort to reward. Maybe it's just passing through and got curious. Predator's psychology was their survival manual, explains Dr. Craig Stanford. They had to think like dragons to predict dragon behavior. Every night, Watcher was an amateur reptile psychologist, reading intent through sound patterns. The dragon pauses at the main entrance. Garu can hear its breathing, deep, regular, unconcerned. It's not stalking, it's considering. This is when amateur watchers panic, creating the movement that triggers attack. Garu remains frozen, trusting in darkness and the dragon's cost-benefit analysis. Minutes pass, like centuries. The dragon huffs, a sound like disgust, and moves on. Its footsteps fade into the forest. Garu waits another 100 heartbeats before allowing himself to relax fractionally. One threat passed, only 6 more hours of potential others. The middle watch is worst. Around what must be midnight, exhaustion attacks. His eyelids gain weight. Pointless, since open or closed makes no difference in absolute darkness. But sleeping on watch means death for everyone. He employs the watcher's trick. Controlled pain, pressing his thumb into a bruise, sharp enough to restore alertness, without sound. They were performing attention marathons. Walker notes, modern security guards with cameras and coffee struggle to stay alert. These watchers maintained vigilance through willpower alone, knowing one lapse meant massacre. A child whimpers in sleep. Before the sound fully forms, Garu hears movement. A parent's hand finding the child's face, soothing before the noise attracts attention. Everyone sleeps on a hair trigger, ready to silence themselves or others. Even dreams are disciplined here. The sounds of night create a symphony only watchers know. Bat wings whisper stories of insect abundance. Owl calls map hunting territories. Even the cave breathes, air moving through chambers in patterns that speak of weather changes. Garu reads these sounds like morning news, updating his threat assessment constantly. Around the 4th hour, the hallucinations begin. Sleep deprivation and sensory deprivation combine to create phantoms. He sees lights that can't exist, hears voices that aren't there. The training covers this too. When your mind creates stimuli, verify through other senses. Touch the wall to ground yourself. Smell the air for real versus imagined threats. Night, Watching induced altered states of consciousness, explains Dr. David Lewis Williams. They were vision questing without intending to. The psychological strain was enormous. Many watchers probably developed what we diagnose as PTSD. A real sound snaps him back. Soft padding feet, multiple individuals. A pack of something approaching. But the gait is wrong, for pursuit. Too casual. Then he smells it. Wet, dog smell. Not dragons, but wild dogs, probably just passing through. Still dangerous to lone hobbits, but unlikely to attack a cave full of them. The dogs investigate briefly, mark territory over Grandfather Echo's marks, and trot on. Garu mentally logs their passage. Tomorrow the hunters will want to know about new competitors in the area. Every sound in the night becomes intelligence for day planning. As dawn finally greys the horizon, Garu's relief is physical. His replacement, Koru, eager and alert, touches his shoulder in the changing of guard ritual. No words needed. The touch says, "I have it." Garu's nod says, "It's yours." The night watch passes like a baton in the world's longest relay race. Every sunrise they saw was a victory. Walker concludes, not metaphorical but literal triumph over darkness. Night watchers were the thin line between sleeping families and stalking death. Garu stumbles to his sleeping spot, exhausted beyond words. But before unconsciousness claims him, he performs one last ritual. His hand finds his daughter's head, confirming she survived another night. She stirs slightly, unconsciously pressing into his protection. Tomorrow night, someone else will take the watch, but inevitably his turn will come again. 6 hours of staring into the abyss, listening for death, staying awake so others can sleep. It's thankless, terrifying, essential work. The night watchers curse, too tired to dream of the darkness they guard against, too practiced to forget it exists. But also the night watcher's pride, another dawn, another survival, another small victory against the dark. 37 hobbits alive because one stayed awake. Not a bad night's work for someone 3 feet tall in a world where darkness has teeth. Little Kayla thrashes in her sleep, tiny fist clenching against invisible threats. Her mother's hand finds her instantly, not to wake, but to soothe. In a world where night terrors can attract real terrors, even dreams must be managed. The trick is calming without fully waking, peace without sound. Around them, 36 other hobbits navigate their own nocturnal journeys. Some chase dream prey across impossible landscapes. Others flee nightmares with too many teeth. All sleep like coiled springs, ready to snap from unconscious to combat in heartbeats. This is sleep in the dragon's den, where rest and vigilance dance together. Hobbit sleep patterns would be diagnosed as disorders today, explains sleep scientist Dr. Jerome Siegel. Hypervigilance, frequent micro-awakenings, synchronized group arousal. They never achieved deep sleep as we know it. Couldn't afford to. The cave sleeping arrangement follows strict protocols. Vulnerable individuals, children, elderly, pregnant females cluster in the center. Strong adults form a living wall around them. The best fighters sleep nearest the entrance, half their brains always listening. It's fortress formation using bodies as battlements. Kala's nightmare intensifies. Her breathing quickens toward the whimper that could doom them all. Her mother employs the ancient technique. Rhythmic chest pressure mimicking heartbeat, the universal mammalian comfort. Combined with gentle hair stroking, it shifts Kala's dreams without breaking sleep's surface. But some dreams help more than hurt. Grandfather Echo twitches through what observers recognize as his successful hunt dream. His legs move in tiny running motions, hands clutching imaginary spears. At 73, he hunts better asleep than most do awake. These rehearsal dreams might be why he survived so long. Dreams served evolutionary functions. Notes neuroscientist Dr. Antti Revonsuo. Threat simulation, skill rehearsal, social bonding scenarios. Their dreams were training programs running during downtime. Sleep was education, not just restoration. The pregnant female deer moans softly through what must be birth dreams. Her hands cradle her swollen belly, brain preparing for labor through nocturnal simulation. Other mothers have reported dreaming their births repeatedly before the event. Each dream teaching positioning, breathing, pushing techniques their conscious minds might miss. Not all sleep is equal. The watchers have trained themselves into a state between sleep and wake, conscious enough to monitor, unconscious enough to rest. It's a skill taking years to develop, often passed from parent to child. Young Garu learned from his father, who learned from his mother, back through generations of semi-sleeping guardians. The cave itself influences dreams. Acoustic properties create sound pools where breathing synchronizes unconsciously. 7 hobbits sleeping near the east wall breathe in perfect unison. Their dreams likely converging too. This accidental coordination might explain shared nightmares, when multiple individuals wake simultaneously from similar terrors. Groups sleeping created dream networks. Siegel explains, pheromones, synchronized breathing, shared acoustic space. They weren't just sleeping near each other, they were dreaming together. Collective unconscious made literal. A monitor lizard scraping breaks through dream barriers. Instantly, 12 adults shift from deep sleep to threat assessment. No one fully wakes, but hands find weapons, bodies orient toward the sound. The lizard passes, and they sink back without ever gaining full consciousness. It's reaction without awareness, protection without disruption. Children sleep differently than adults. Their dreams are wilder, movements less controlled. That's why they're centered, surrounded by adults who can suppress dangerous outbursts. Little Tico kicks through what looks like a dragon fighting dream, his uncle's hand gently restraining without waking. But the most fascinating dreams belong to the toolmakers. Their hands work through napping motions, muscle memory practicing even in sleep. Apprentices often report dreaming solutions to technical problems, waking with new understanding of angles and force. Sleep becomes workshop where the unconscious mind perfects what conscious practice began. Motor learning consolidation during sleep is well documented, notes Dr. Matthew Walker, but Homo Floresiensis took it further. Their dreams were active training sessions. They literally learned while sleeping, perfecting survival skills through repetition. The deepest sleep comes just before dawn. Dangerous timing when predators make final hunting pushes. But hobbits have adapted. Their sleep cycles compress, grabbing necessary deep sleep in shorter bursts. What takes modern humans 90 minutes, they achieve in 30. Efficiency born from evolutionary pressure. Cinta's baby wakes hungry, but even infant cries are managed. Cinta's hand covers the baby's mouth before sound escapes, redirecting to silent nursing. The baby feeds in darkness, comforted by heartbeat and warmth. Around them, others adjust positions to give privacy that's more courtesy than reality. Dreams shift with age. Children's dreams are immediate. Today's dragon, yesterday's successful foraging. Adult dreams span time, planning tomorrow's hunt, rehearsing seasonal movements. Elder dreams reach into deep past, preserving memories that might save future generations. Each age dreams what they need most. Their dreams were survival libraries, Revonsuo suggests. Information too important for conscious memory alone got rehearsed nightly. Every dream was potential lesson, every nightmare possible future to avoid. As dawn approaches, sleep lightens collectively. Without alarm clocks, they've evolved to sense approaching daylight through temperature changes, sound shifts, even electromagnetic variations. The cave begins to stir like a single organism waking, dreams dissolving into day's demands. Carla wakes peacefully, her nightmare forgotten. She doesn't know her mother spent hours managing her dreams, keeping her safe even in sleep. Doesn't understand that her nightmares were practice for real threats. Her brain preparing for dragons she'll inevitably meet. The adults exchange exhausted glances. Another night survived, though sleep seems generous for what they've experienced. More like controlled unconsciousness punctuated by vigilance. But it's enough. Has to be enough. They redefined sleep, Walker concludes. Not 8 hours of vulnerability, but a complex dance of rest and readiness. They proved humans could adapt even our most basic needs to survival demands. Today brings real dragons, actual threats, waking nightmares. But first, they've survived the vulnerability of dreams in the dragon's den. 37 hobbits waking to face another day, rested enough to function, alert enough to survive. Their dreams were teachers, their sleep was school, and every dawn was graduation day in the University of Staying Alive when darkness wants you dead. The dragon's den never sleeps, neither truly do its inhabitants. They've simply learned to dream with one eye open, proving that even unconsciousness can be weaponized when your life depends on it. The strangers stand at the forest edge like trees that learn to walk. 6 feet tall, almost double hobbit height, carrying spears that shine with supernatural sharpness. Their faces are wrong too, flat where they should bulge, smooth where hair should grow. These aren't neighboring hobbits from 2 valleys over. These are something unprecedented. Mira clutches her daughter tighter, every instinct screaming danger. The band has frozen in place. 37 small bodies suddenly aware of their cosmic insignificance. The strangers number only 5, but their presence fills the clearing like smoke fills lungs. Even the children understand. The world just changed forever. First contact between Homo sapiens and Floresiensis was probably the most significant meeting in human history, states paleoanthropologist Dr. Chris Stringer. 2 human species evolved separately for 700,000 years, suddenly face to face. The psychological impact on both sides must have been staggering. The tall ones move differently. Where hobbits scurry with efficient economy, these giants stride with casual confidence. Their spears are impossibly long, tipped with stone that gleams like frozen water. But the most terrifying thing, the object the leader carries. A curved stick with plant fiber stretched between ends, completely alien, purpose unknown. Koru steps forward. As the band's best hunter, he's default ambassador to this impossible situation. His spear looks like a child's toy compared to theirs. His 4-foot frame requires him to look up at angles that hurt his neck. But someone has to make contact, and testosterone nominates him. The tall one's language is pure gibberish, sounds that flow like water instead of clicking like proper speech. But the tone seems non-aggressive. Maybe reading alien faces is guesswork when you've only known your own species. Are those teeth showing expressions, threats, or greetings? Language barriers would have been absolute, notes linguist Dr. Dediu Dan. Homo floresiensis proto-language was probably click-based, limited vocabulary. Homo sapiens had full symbolic language, like dogs trying to communicate with dolphins. The tall one gestures at the curved stick, then demonstrates. He fits a straight stick to the string, pulls back, and releases. The small spear flies faster than thrown spears should, embedding in a tree 30 paces away. The hobbits recoil as if he'd summoned lightning. This is magic. Terrifying magic. But then the tall one does something unexpected. He sets down his weapons, sits cross-legged, making himself smaller, reaches into a carrier and produces food, dried meat, but prepared strangely. He tears a piece, eats it, then offers some to Koru. The sharing of food, universal diplomacy across all human cultures. Koru understands this gesture even if nothing else makes sense. He accepts the meat, sniffs carefully, smoked somehow, flavored with unknown plants. His people can't make fire, but they know its smell from lightning-struck trees. These strangers control fire like hobbits, control stone tools. Food sharing was probably the first bridge, explains anthropologist Dr. Marta Mirazon-La. Both species understood reciprocity. Sharing food meant, I don't intend to eat you, which was crucial first step in interspecies relations. Koru reciprocates with giant rat meat, fresh from this morning's hunt. The tall one examines it with interest, takes a bite, nods approval. His companions relax fractionally. First contact has passed without bloodshed. But now what? The tall ones seem interested in Hobbit tools. One gestures at Tico's flaking stone, miming curiosity. When Tico demonstrates his napping technique, they watch with intense focus. They have superior tools, but seem impressed by Hobbit precision, with inferior materials. It's like Formula One drivers admiring someone's go-kart skills. Then comes the demonstration that changes everything. A tall one produces 2 stones and strikes them together. Sparks fly. He strikes again over dried grass. Smoke rises. Within minutes, actual fire blazes where none existed before. The hobbits retreat in unified terror. Fire from nothing. These aren't just tall humans. They're gods. Imagine never seeing fire making after 700,000 years without it, Stringer emphasizes. It would seem like supernatural power. The psychological impact of that demonstration probably exceeded the bow and arrow. But the tall ones don't attack with their god powers. Instead, they feed the fire with branches, create a circle of warmth, gesture for hobbits to approach. Some do, tentatively. The heat feels like sunshine, but portable. Children reach tiny hands toward flames, parents pulling them back from this beautiful danger. Communication attempts continue through mime and demonstration. The tall ones point to themselves. Sapiens, or something similar, point to hobbits, waiting. Koru manages hobbies, their name for themselves. The tall ones repeat it, badly, but trying. First words exchanged between species. As afternoon wears on, patterns emerge. The tall ones are exploring, not invading. Their gestures suggest they came from beyond the mountains. Impossible distances by hobbit standards. They seem amazed that hobbits exist. Keep pointing and talking among themselves in their water language. Both species were probably equally shocked, notes Dr. Juanzilo. Sapiens thought they were alone. Floresiensis had never imagined such beings existed. It was mutual discovery of unimaginable others. The tall ones demonstrate more magic, containers that hold water without leaking, cutting tools sharper than anything stone should achieve, ornaments made from materials hobbits don't recognize. Everything about them screams superiority, yet they're not aggressive. Yet, as evening approaches, decision time arrives. The tall ones gesture at sleeping, then at the forest. They'll camp separately tonight. The meaning is clear. We acknowledge your territory. The respect surprises hobbits, accustomed to every encounter being potential combat. But before leaving, the tall one who first made contact does something extraordinary. He gives Koru the curved stick. The bow, shows again how to use it. Leaves arrows too. Then points at himself, at Koru, makes bridging gesture. Gift. Alliance. Something hobbits have no word for, but understand instinctively. Technology transfer at first contact shows remarkable diplomacy. La observes, the sapiens could have kept their advantages. Instead, they shared, whether from guilt, strategy, or genuine goodwill. We'll never know. The tall ones disappear into forest their height makes navigable. Hobbits cluster around the bow like it's radioactive. Everyone understands this object changes everything. Their spears are suddenly obsolete. Their hunting strategies need complete revision. One gift has revolutionized their existence. Mira holds her daughter, wondering what future contains now. These tall ones seem peaceful, but what happens when more come, when they want Hobbit territories, when their magic makes Hobbit skills irrelevant? First contact has been survived, but at what cost? The tragedy was built into that first meeting. Stringer concludes, 2 human species couldn't coexist long term. One had fire, projectile weapons, and demographic advantages. The clock started ticking on Homo Floresiensis the moment Homo sapiens arrived. As darkness falls, hobbits don't perform their usual twilight rituals. Too much has changed. The world now contains tall humans with fire and flying spears. Everything previous generations taught them feels suddenly obsolete. But the bow remains, alien artifact promising either salvation or doom. Tomorrow, Koru will try to master it. Tomorrow, hobbits will begin adapting to a world where they're no longer the only humans. Tonight, they huddle together, processing the impossible. First contact has been peaceful, but everyone senses this is beginning, not ending. The tall ones will return. More will come, and hobbits will have to evolve faster than evolution allows or face the alternative. The age of being alone is over. The age of being lesser has begun. The tall ones return at dawn, but this time they bring the sun, not literally. Though, to hobbits who've never seen controlled fire, the distinctions seem semantic. They carry burning branches like flowers, flames dancing in defiance of nature's rules. The fire travels with them, obedient as trained animals. Where they stop, light pools in impossible circles. Cinta pulls her baby closer, watching 4-year-old Kala toddle toward the flames with suicidal curiosity. All hobbit children learn early that light means lightning, and lightning means death. But this light doesn't strike. It beckons. It warms without weather. It transforms the tall ones into haloed gods. The introduction of fire to a fireless society was probably humanity's most dramatic technological disruption, explains pyrotechnology expert Dr. Dennis Sangaith. Imagine having lived 700,000 years in darkness. Then someone hands you portable daylight. The psychological impact would be beyond profound. The tall one's leader, they seem to have hierarchy hobbits lack, demonstrates fire's magic. Meat placed near flames changes color and smell. He offers cooked flesh to Koru, who accepts with the fatalism of someone already living in impossible times. The taste explosion makes him stagger, tender where raw meat is tough, flavors that shouldn't exist bursting across his palate. Every hobbit who tastes cooked food has the same reaction, revelation followed by existential crisis. Their ancestors ate raw meat for 30,000 generations, suffered through tough sinew, risked parasites, spent hours chewing what fire softens in minutes. All that suffering, unnecessary if only they'd known this secret. But the tall ones aren't finished destroying hobbit worldviews. They demonstrate water in strange vessels placed over fire. The water bubbles, steams, become something else. Plants thrown in create aromatic liquids. Medicine, poison. The concepts blur when everything is unprecedented. Fire didn't just cook food, notes Dr. Richard Wrangham, author of Catching Fire. It pre-digested nutrients, killed parasites, opened up previously toxic foods. For Homo floresiensis, it would have been like suddenly having access to twice as many calories with half the effort. The children adapt fastest, while adults wrestle with existential implications. Little Tico studies fire like tomorrow's test depends on it. Which it does. He watches tall ones feed flames, small sticks first, then larger. Too much, and it dies. Too little, and it fades. Fire is alive but follows rules. Rules can be learned. The tall ones seem amused by Hobbit fascination. They demonstrate more fire applications, hardening spear points in flames, creating smoke that drives away the persistent mosquitoes, using coals to hollow out wood faster than stone tools allow. Each revelation another nail in traditional Hobbit life's coffin. But firelight's most profound impact comes at night. As darkness falls, hobbits prepare for their usual 12 hours of terror. Instead, tall ones build fires around the camp perimeter. The darkness retreats, not eliminated, but pushed back, held at bay by dancing light circles. Extending productive hours by 50% changed everything, Sangaith explains. Suddenly you could work after dark, socialize without fear, develop culture beyond mere survival. Fire was time travel. It gave them tomorrow's hours today. A Komodo dragon approaches, drawn by activity, but instead of pressing attack, it stops at fire's edge. Yellow eyes reflect flames as it processes this new variable. Fire means lightning to dragons too. After long consideration, it retreats. The hobbits watch predator turned prey slink away. Understanding power has fundamentally shifted. The tall ones sing around their fires. Complex vocalizations hobbits can't decode but find mesmerizing. Mouths making music, hands moving in synchronized gestures, bodies swaying together. This is what culture looks like with surplus energy. Arts born from security hobbits have never known. Fire enabled the creation of cultural time, observes archaeologist Dr. Polly Wiesner. Time not devoted to immediate survival. Time for stories, songs, social bonding. Homo floresiensis was about to discover leisure, and leisure creates civilization. Some hobbits join the tall ones by the fire. The warmth is narcotic, addictive. Cinta brings her baby close, watching tiny eyes track flame movement. This child will grow up expecting light in darkness, warmth on demand. The first Hobbit generation to assume fire's presence. The last to remember its absence. Koru asks through gestures, how is fire born? The tall one demonstrates friction method. Spinning stick between palms, tinder smoking, careful breath bringing flame to life. It looks like magic, but follows patterns. Koru tries, fails, tries again. His hands aren't built for this motion. Frustration mounts. But young Lila, watching from the side, has an idea. She modifies the technique for hobbit limitations, using feet to steady the base, different hand positions for their proportions. On her third try, smoke rises. On her fifth, a tiny flame births from friction. The first hobbit made fire in 700,000 years. Technological adaptation often requires morphological adjustment, notes Dr. Erin Hecht. Homo floresiensis couldn't just copy sapiens techniques. They had to reinvent fire-making for their unique anatomy. That cognitive leap was remarkable. The implications cascade. With fire, they can cook tough plants previously inedible, preserve meat through smoking, work past sunset, drive away predators, treat injuries with heated tools. Every aspect of existence suddenly has upgraded options. The Stone Age just became the Fire Age. But not all hobbits celebrate. Some elders retreat to cave darkness, overwhelmed by change. They spend 60 years mastering fireless survival, and suddenly those skills are obsolete. What value does expertise in darkness navigation have when light is portable? Who needs legendary raw meat processing skills when cooking exists? Cultural disruption creates winners and losers. Reisner observes, young hobbits who adapted to fire gained advantage. Older ones who'd invested in traditional skills faced existential obsolescence. The generation gap must have been brutal. The tall ones prepared to leave again, but this time they leave more than tools. They leave 3 precious coals in a clay container, showing how to transport fire between camps. The gift seems impossible, living flame that travels. But the coals glow, patient red, waiting to birth new fires when fed. As the tall ones disappear into forest made navigable by their height and torches, hobbits cluster around their first self-maintained fire. It's small, smoky, inefficient, but it's theirs. The Prometheus moment has passed. They're no longer nature's subjects, but participants in controlling elements. Cinta's baby reaches for the flames, and for the first time in Hobbit history, a mother must teach hot as a concept. New words will be needed, new warnings, new possibilities. The fire brings its own dangers, but they're chosen dangers, controlled risks. In one generation, Homo Floresiensis jumped 700,000 years of technological evolution, Sangathi concludes. From pre-fire hominins to fire users overnight, the adaptation required was staggering, but the alternative was extinction. The fire burns through the night. No one sleeps well. Too much stimulation, too many implications to process. But also, for the first time in 30,000 generations, no one stays awake on terrified watch. The fire stands guard, democratic in its protection. Tomorrow they'll hunt by firelight, cook their first meal, begin the 10,000 adaptations required to integrate this new reality. But tonight, they simply stare at the impossible made routine, watching their shadows dance on cave walls like prophecies of the future. The Firebringers gave more than technology. They gave time, safety, and possibilities hobbits couldn't imagine. Whether gift or curse remains to be seen. But the flame is lit, and there's no going back to darkness. The transformation has begun, and it started with a spark. The irony cuts deeper than any stone blade. Their most successful hunt will be their last, traditional one. Koru leads 12 hobbits armed with a mixture of ancient and modern. Traditional thrusting spears in experienced hands, the tall one's bow carried like a sacred relic, everyone moving with the desperate efficiency of people who sense an era ending. They're tracking the old bull stegodon, the one with the broken tusk they've monitored for 3 seasons. He's past prime, slowing the herd, perfect for a final kill. But perfect is now complicated. With fire-hardened spears and the bow's range, they could take healthy adults. The rules have changed, but muscle memory follows ancestral patterns. Cultural inertia is powerful, observes Dr. Marcus Bamford. Even with superior technology, they default to traditional methods. The last hunt was probably more about identity than necessity, proving they were still who they'd always been. Tico, now 15 and blooded in previous hunts, carries the firepot, portable coals that will let them cook in the field. The weight of tradition and innovation literally burden his shoulders. Every step sloshes old against new, past against future, what they were against what they're becoming. The tracks tell familiar stories. The bull favors his left front foot. Old injury acting up. He's been browsing bitter plants that indicate digestive issues. The dong is loose, suggesting he's struggling to process food efficiently. All the signs point to an animal ready for culling, as if nature herself is staging this farewell performance. They find him in the usual spot, the clearing by the limestone spring where elephants have drunk for millennia. He's alone, as predicted. The herd moved on yesterday, leaving their burden to whatever fate finds him. His eyes, rheumy with age, track their approach without the usual alarm. Perhaps he recognizes destiny in small forms. The emotional complexity of hunting familiar animals is underexplored. Notes Dr. Agustin Fuentes. This wasn't anonymous prey, but an individual they'd watched for years. The last hunt carried weight beyond calories. It was goodbye to a relationship. Koru assigns positions through gesture, and the hunters move with choreographed precision. Generations of practice flow through their movements. But young Lila holds the bow, and suddenly the geometry is wrong. She doesn't need to get close. The fundamental mathematics of hobbit hunting, proximity equals possibility, no longer applies. The bull seems to sense something different. His trunk rises, testing air that smells of smoke from their firepot. He's never associated hobbits with that lightning scent. The confusion in his stance is almost human. The world is changing for everyone, predator and prey alike. Lila draws the bow, a motion she's practiced thousands of times since the Tall One's gift. But practice on trees doesn't prepare for the weight of ending an era. Her hands shake, not from fear but from understanding. This arrow will fly straight from future into past, dividing time into before and after. Technological transitions create moral burdens. Fuentes observes, when hunting becomes easier, it also becomes more clearly a choice. The last hunt confronted them with ethics their ancestors never faced. She releases, the arrow flies true, finding the spot behind the shoulder where vital organs cluster. But it's not immediately fatal. Hobbit weight draw can't match Tall One power. The bull trumpets, more surprised than pained, and the traditional hunters surge forward with their spears. What follows is a hybrid of old and new, thrusting spears wielded with ancient precision. But the animal is already weakened by the arrow. The fire-hardened points penetrate easier than traditional ones. The kill comes faster, cleaner. Evolution in real time, measured in reduced suffering. As the bull falls, Koru places a hand on the massive head, a gesture his grandfather taught him, acknowledging the transfer of life force. But the ritual feels hollow now. Life force seems less mysterious when you've seen the Tall Ones strike fire from nothing, reshape reality with tools beyond comprehension. Spiritual relationships with prey often don't survive technological advancement. Notes Dr. Lynn Wadley. When hunting becomes mechanical, the mystical connection breaks. The last hunt was probably the last time they felt that ancestral bond. The butchering proceeds with unprecedented efficiency. Fire-heated blades cut through hide like it's wet paper. Meat cooks on site, reducing weight for transport. What once took all day now finishes by noon. Efficiency is progress, but something ineffable is lost in the speed. Young Mira asks through gestures, why not hunt the young, healthy ones now? We could. The question hangs like smoke, because we've always hunted the old and weak. But tradition feels fragile when technology makes it optional. The answer comes from Grandfather Echo, because we're still hobbits. For now. They feast by firelight, itself still novel enough to feel magical. Cooked elephant meat, tender and digestible, nutrients unlocked by flame. Everyone eats better with less effort. Children who would struggle with tough, raw meat gulp down portions that will help them grow stronger. Progress tastes good. Dietary improvements from cooking created cascading effects, explains Dr. Rachel Carmody. Larger brains, better health, increased fertility. The last traditional hunt was actually the first step toward their eventual disappearance. Success can be its own extinction, but success feels complicated sitting around fire that makes darkness optional. The old ways are already romantic nostalgia. Children born next year won't understand why anyone would eat raw meat or hunt without bows. The knowledge accumulated over 30,000 generations will become trivia within one. Koru demonstrates the bow again for the eager young hunters. Its power still amazes. Death delivered from safe distances. But he also shows traditional spear work, insisting they learn both. Some mock the old ways already. Why master difficult skills when easy ones exist? The divide between generations widens with each demonstration. As they carry the butchered elephant home, the weight seems symbolic. They're hauling the past into a future that doesn't need it. The skills that define them, reading elephants, coordinating close combat hunts, surviving without fire, are becoming obsolete faster than adaptation allows. The last hunt marked psychological transition more than technological, Bamford concludes. They could have continued traditional methods indefinitely, but once you've tasted the future, the past loses flavor, choice, not necessity. Ended their ancestral lifestyle. Back at camp, the meat is received with celebration tinged by melancholy. Everyone knows this hunt felt different. The tall one's gifts have made them rich in ways they're still discovering, but wealth comes with loss. Who are hobbits, if not the small people who survive through cleverness against overwhelming odds? Now the odds are less overwhelming. Fire drives away dragons. Bows make hunting safer. Cooking makes food abundant. Each advantage chips away at the identity forged through hardship. They're becoming something new, and no one knows what that means. The children practice with tiny bows, already better than their parents. They'll never know the terror of darkness without fire, the desperation of failed hunts, the bonds forged through shared suffering. They'll be healthier, safer, more successful, and somehow less hobbit. Every technological revolution involves mourning, Wadley reflects. The last hunt was funeral for a way of life, necessary death, but death nonetheless. They were burying 700,000 years of tradition in that elephant's bones. As night falls, no longer the enemy it once was, Koru sits by the fire, turning the traditional spear in his hands. Tomorrow he'll teach both weapons to his son, but he knows which one the boy will prefer. The future always wins. It just doesn't always feel like victory. The last hunt is over. The first hunt of the new age awaits. And in between, hobbits wrestle with success that feels like surrender, progress that tastes of loss, and the terrible freedom of no longer needing to be exactly what they've always been. Evolution never asks permission. It just presents opportunities and watches what happens next. The hobbits chose survival, as they always have, but survival's shape is changing faster than hearts can follow. The elephant is eaten, the tradition is digested, and tomorrow, armed with fire and arrows, they'll hunt like the giants they're becoming, 3 feet tall, but no longer small in the ways that once defined them. The grandmother speaks in the old, clicking language, but half the children don't understand. They've learned the tall one's flowing words, finding them better for describing fire and bows and the new world emerging. But grandmother persists, telling the stories that must not die, even as the people who lived them do. We were here when the earth shook and dragons walked taller than trees. She click whispers, her arthritic hands mining impossibly large creatures. We were small, but we were many. We were weak, but we were clever. We survived the great darkness before the tall ones brought their tame lightning. 6-year-old Pila translates for her younger sister. already bridging worlds her grandmother can't imagine. The old stories sound different to the new language, less immediate, more mythical. Details soften, edges blur, truth becomes tale. Oral traditions rarely survive technological disruption intact, explains folklorist Dr. Michelle Skelly Sugiyama. When the context changes, stories adapt or die. Homo Floresiensis tales were already morphing within the first generation of contact. The tall ones have their own stories about the hobbits. Sitting by their greater fires, they tell of finding the small people who couldn't make flame, who hunted giants with tiny spears, who lived like shadows in the Dragonlands. Their stories paint hobbits as curiosities, clever animals or diminished humans, never quite equals. But the children born after contact are writing new stories with their lives. Young Kala, now 8, speaks both languages fluently. She hunts with bow and traditional spear, kindles fire but remembers the darkness stories. She's becoming something neither culture has words for. A bridge person, fully hobbit, yet irrevocably changed. The physical changes are subtle but significant. Children with access to cooked food grow taller, still hobbits small but approaching 4 feet more commonly. Their teeth wear differently, without the constant grinding of raw meat. Their bones show fewer signs of nutritional stress. Evolution accelerating in real time. Morphological changes from dietary improvements happen quickly, notes Dr. Peter Brown. Within 3 generations, classic Homo floresiensis features would start softening. They were becoming something new while their grandparents watched. The grandmother continues her stories, but now they carry urgency. She knows. Everyone knows. These are the last years of pure hobbit culture. Already, young adults prefer the tall ones' methods. Why spend hours napping stone when the tall ones trade metal tools for simple gathered foods? Why master dragon avoidance when fire keeps them away? Some hobbits have moved to the tall ones' settlements, living on the edges, adopting their ways completely. They return to visit wearing woven clothes instead of skins, speaking only the water language. Their children unable to click properly. Each visit shows more distance traveled from ancestral ways. Cultural extinction often precedes physical extinction, observes anthropologist Dr. Keith Otterbein. The last speakers of a language, the last practitioners of traditional skills, their monuments to vanishing worlds. Every elder hobbit was becoming living history. The irony is that hobbit skills remain valuable, just recontextualized. Their knowledge of local plants helps tall ones find medicines. Their small size lets them access caves tall ones can't enter. Their patient observation of animals aids in hunting, but these become servant skills. Auxiliary knowledge to tall one dominance. Young males face the hardest transition. For 30,000 generations, hobbit masculinity meant close combat hunting, facing dragons with spears, protecting the band through physical courage. Now tall ones' projectiles make those skills obsolete. What is a warrior when war has changed beyond recognition? Gender role disruption during technological transition is understudied, notes Dr. Agustin Fuentes. Male hobbits faced existential crisis when their defining skills became irrelevant overnight. Some adapted by excelling at new technologies, others retreated into nostalgia. The grandmother reaches the part of a story where hobbits first saw fire. Her version differs from what the children have heard from their parents. In her telling, fire was gift and curse, salvation and destruction. The nuance is lost on young ears accustomed to fire's constant presence. But 5-year-old Miko asks a profound question. Why didn't we make fire before? The grandmother has no answer that satisfies. They just didn't, couldn't. The concept doesn't translate. How do you explain the absence of something that now seems essential? Each generation's normal resets completely. Sugiyama explains, what seems impossible to one generation becomes inevitable to the next. The grandmother's stories documented a world her grandchildren literally couldn't conceive. The tall ones encourage certain stories while discouraging others. They like tales of Hobbit cleverness, the small people outsmarting dragons through wit, but stories of Hobbit independence, of the time before tall ones, of complete self-sufficiency. These make them uncomfortable. Better to portray hobbits as always needing help. Some hobbits resist this narrative reshaping. Secret gatherings in deep caves preserve the true stories, the ones where hobbits were heroes of their own tales, not supporting characters in tall one dramas. But even these resistant stories evolve, becoming more about cultural preservation than historical accuracy. Memory is plastic, especially collective memory. Notes psychologist Dr. Pascal Boyer. Within 2 generations, historical hobbits were becoming mythological. Real events transformed into moral tales, actual people into archetypal figures. The children play games that blend both worlds. Dragons and hobbits now includes tall ones with fire. Hunt the Elephant uses both toy bows and spears. They're creating fusion culture in real time, taking what works from both traditions, discarding what doesn't serve their hybrid existence. But some things are already lost. No child born after contact has experienced true darkness terror. None have felt the specific desperation of fireless winter nights. The visceral knowledge that shaped 30,000 generations is becoming abstract. Story elements rather than lived experience. Cultural DNA has a half-life, Boyer observes. Each transmission loses resolution. The grandmother's stories are photographs. Her children's retellings are paintings. The grandchildren's will be impressionist sketches at best. As night falls, no longer feared, the grandmother finishes her tale. The children thank her politely in the water language, then run to play by the tall one's fire. She watches them go, these children who are and aren't her people, carrying forward genes but not dreams. Tomorrow she'll tell another story, and another child will ask why hobbits didn't just make fire, use bows, be taller, and she'll have no answer that bridges the gulf between what was and what is. The stories are becoming legends faster than memory can hold them. But still, she tells them, because somewhere in the clicking language and mining hands, truth persists. Small people faced a giant world and won for 700,000 years. That's worth remembering, even if the remembering changes with each telling. The tragedy of oral tradition, Sugiyama concludes, is that it must adapt to survive. But adaptation is itself a form of death. The grandmother's stories were both preservation and transformation, keeping hobbits alive in memory while watching them die in reality. The children sleep by fires their ancestors couldn't make, dreaming in languages their grandparents can't speak, becoming legends while their living relatives watch. The stories continue, evolved beyond recognition, carrying forward the echo of what was into the reality of what must be. Tomorrow, fewer will understand the clicking language. Tomorrow, more will choose bows over spears. Tomorrow, the legends will grow larger as the people who live them grow smaller in memory's rearview mirror. But tonight, one grandmother remembers when hobbits ruled the darkness through courage alone, and for as long as her clicking voice continues, that truth persists, fragile as flame, but just as determined to burn. No one marks the exact moment. Extinction rarely announces itself with drama. It whispers away on quiet feet, noticed only in absence. But somewhere around 50,000 years ago, the last Homo Floresiensis takes their final breath, and a 700,000-year success story ends, not with apocalypse, but with arithmetic. The band is down to 18. They've retreated deep into the highland caves where tall ones rarely venture, clinging to territories that shrink with each season. The children, only 3 now, speak mostly the water language. The adults maintain the old ways through stubborn pride, but everyone knows they're performing museum pieces. Extinction is usually mundane, explains conservation biologist Dr. David Burney. No asteroid impact or volcanic catastrophe, just declining birth rates, shrinking territories, and the slow mathematics of demographic collapse. The last Hobbit probably died of something utterly ordinary. Old Tura, the last true elder at 43, reads the signs with the fatalism of someone who's watched the world transform. The young adults leave for tall one settlements and don't return. The few who stay struggle with fertility, too closely related, too stressed, too aware they're gambling with borrowed time. Each failed pregnancy is another nail in their species' coffin. The tall ones aren't actively hostile. That might be easier to fight. Instead, they're indifferent, occasionally patronizing, viewing hobbits like clever pets or animated fossils. They trade with them, sometimes interbreed, but never as equals. The psychological weight of being permanently lesser crushes spirits evolved for autonomy. Young Dara, 16 and pregnant by a tall one, embodies the complicated future. Her child will carry Hobbit genes but be raised in tall one culture. She's already forgotten most of the clicking language, finds traditional skills quaint. When she looks at her Hobbit relatives, her eyes hold pity, not pride. Genetic swamping is extinction through dilution, notes Dr. Chris Stringer. Homo floresiensis genes persist in modern populations, but the species as distinct entity vanished. They were absorbed, not eliminated. A gentler extinction, but extinction nonetheless. The practical triggers accumulate. Tall ones claim the best water sources, not through force but simply by arriving first with superior tools. Their fire-driven hunting depletes game faster than ecosystems can sustain. Their diseases, mild for them, devastate Hobbit immune systems evolved in isolation. But the deepest wound is psychological. Every Hobbit child sees the choice. Struggle with traditional ways or adopt tall one culture and thrive. It's not really a choice. Within 2 generations, no full-blooded Hobbit children are born. The hybrids are taller, speak only water language, no fire-making, but not darkness survival. Cultural extinction preceded physical extinction, observes Dr. Robin Dennell. When the last person who remembers fireless nights dies, when the last speaker of the clicking language goes silent, the species is functionally extinct, even if genes persist. The final years blur between dignity and desperation. The remaining hobbits maintain rituals no one remembers the purpose of. They nap stones while metal tools hang unused. They practice darkness navigation in caves now lit by tall one torches. They're performing identity rather than living it. Tura organizes one last traditional hunt, but only 4 adults participate. They track a juvenile stegodon with ancestral skills, but the kill feels hollow. Cooking it over fire they didn't make, seasoning with tall one spices. They're eating their own funeral feast and everyone knows it. The children born to hybrid parents visit sometimes, curious about their heritage, but they're tourists in their own ancestry, taking stories back to tall one settlements like souvenirs. My grandmother was full Hobbit, they'll say, the way people claim connection to any extinct nobility. The last generation knows their last, Dennell notes. That knowledge is its own extinction pressure. Why maintain traditions with no future? Why preserve skills no one will use? The psychological burden of being terminal is unbearable. Disease delivers the final blow. A respiratory infection, mild in tall ones but lethal to isolated hobbits, sweeps through the highland caves. The young fight it off but are left weakened. The elderly succumb quickly. Within one terrible season, the band shrinks from 18 to 7. The survivors face the arithmetic. 7 individuals, only 2 of breeding age, already closely related. Even if they want to continue, the numbers don't work. Minimum viable population requires 50 individuals, preferably hundreds. They're already ghosts. The disease just makes it official. One by one, they drift away. Some to tall one settlements where they'll live as curiosities. Some deeper into the forest where they'll die alone but free. The highland caves empty of clicking voices for the first time in millennia. The hearths where they couldn't make fire go cold. We'll never know who was last. Stringer reflects. Some elderly woman dying of infection in a cave. A hybrid child who carried the genes but not the culture. The exact moment matters less than the fact. A human species that survived 700,000 years vanished within centuries of meeting us. The tall ones tell stories about the small people for a few generations. Then the stories become legends. Then the legends become fairy tales. The Ebu-Gogo of folklore, hairy, small, speaking in whispers, preserve distorted memories of real encounters. But each retelling drifts further from truth. In modern Flores, local people still leave food at certain caves. They say it's for the spirits of the small people who lived there before. They don't really believe, but maintain the tradition. Sometimes, they claim, you can hear clicking sounds in the deep caves. Wind through limestone, surely. Not the ghost of an extinct language. Every human on Flores carries trace amounts of Homo Floresiensis DNA, concludes geneticist Dr. Murray Cox. They're not gone. They're diluted, dissolved into us like salt in ocean, present everywhere, visible nowhere. The last Hobbit, whoever, whenever, wherever they were, died as they lived. Small, clever, and ultimately overwhelmed by a world sized for giants. They took with them 700,000 years of accumulated wisdom about surviving without fire, living among dragons, and finding dignity in being different. We gained their genes, but lost their knowledge. We carry their DNA, but not their dreams. We inherited their islands, but not their insights. They're extinct in every way that matters, surviving only as whispers in our cells, and fragments in our stories. Homo Floresiensis proved that different kinds of humans were possible, Burney concludes. Their extinction proved that possible doesn't mean permanent. They were evolution's experiment in minimalism, and for 700,000 years it worked. Then they met us. And it didn't. The caves stand empty now, visited only by scientists and tourists. The dragons evolved into smaller monitors. The dwarf elephants vanished too. The entire ecosystem that supported hobbits collapsed when they did, proving how integral they were to their world. But on quiet nights, when the moon is right and the wind moves just so through the limestone chambers, some people swear they hear it. The clicking language of the small people, telling stories of when they ruled the darkness through courage alone. Probably imagination, probably wind. But maybe, just maybe, the ghosts of hobbits linger in the stones, waiting for someone to remember their names. Not Ebu-Gogo or Homo Floresiensis or any label we've assigned, but the name they called themselves in the clicking language no living person speaks. The name that died with them on the day the hobbits disappeared, leaving only silence where 700,000 years of stories used to be. They were here, they mattered, they died, and we're all that's left to remember them. The tall ones who brought fire and dilution and the terrible gift of being the only humans in a world that once held magnificent variety. The hobbits are gone. Long live the hobbits, if only in the fragments of themselves they left in us, waiting to be remembered by descendants who've forgotten how to click.